We are good to go. Thank you.
All right, thank you all for coming. Good evening to you all. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Budget Committee for the Centennial School District. And can I get an adoption of the agenda, please? First order of business. I need a motion and a second and a vote.
Move to adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
Chair Harden, can I share some information? We're having an issue with the website link, the Zoom link. So if we could pause for a minute till we get that resolved, that'd be helpful. So we could have everybody have access to the meeting.
Everybody okay with that?
Thank you, Chair. I'm gonna go check in with them real quick. Hopefully it's something will get resolved really quick. All right, thanks for your patience. Chief Correa is helping Regina get this issue resolved promptly. So I apologize for the delay, everyone. Hopefully we'll have this resolved in just another minute or two. All right, thanks for your patience. We've got that resolved and the link gets posted on the meeting budget page for everyone to find. And we can proceed, Chair Harden, when you're ready.
Right. Sorry about that, everyone. Appreciate your patience in the matter. So, so much for the practice start. So once again, we will call to order the meeting of the Centennial School District Budget Committee. And first order of business, item 1.1 is adoption of tonight's agenda. If I could get a motion in a second, we'll all vote.
Move the agenda as presented.
Second.
All right, everyone in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, one down. Great job, everyone. Moving on to item 1.2, election of this year's budget chair and vice chair for the 2024-2025 budget season, I call it. Is there any nominations?
I nominate Jess Harden to continue as budget chair.
All right.
Second.
All right, we'll open it
Is
up.
that how we do it? I can't. Maybe not. Maybe we just take nominations, right?
Yeah, let's take nominations and we'll go from there. Any other nominations? All right, well, thank you. Well, we'll take a vote. There's no other nominations. All in favor of Jess Harden remaining the budget chair for the upcoming season? All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
All right. Thank you all so much. And we will move on to the office of vice chair for the 2024-2025 season. Are there any nominations? I'll nominate Myrna Jensen, vice chair.
I'll second that.
All right. Any other nominations? All right, we'll close it out. All in favor of Myrna Jensen staying vice chair of the 2024-25 budget committee? Say aye.
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 You don't have to vote for yourself. You don't want to, Myrna. It's okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. We will move on to items 2.0 reports. 2.1, the budget message. With that, I believe I'll hand you off to Superintendent Owens.
Great. Thanks so much, Chair Harden. And thank you to Vice Chair Myrna Jensen and the whole committee. I appreciate your engagement tonight. You've got Director in Southerton and me for the next hour to an hour and a half. So buckle up and bear with us. I've got the first dozen or so slides, so I'll go ahead and start, and then I'll pass it off to Director Southerton after that. So thanks for being here tonight and for your engagement with the Centennial School District budgeting process as we develop the budget for the 2024-2025 school year. The presentation that Director Southerton and I will provide tonight accompanies the proposed budget, which will be presented this evening and will be available on the district's website in the business services section. The actual executive summary from which this presentation is drawn is several pages in length, and we encourage you to read that after this meeting. This presentation that you'll see right now highlights some of the key points from that executive summary. Next slide. Here you can see the agenda for this presentation listed on this slide. I will start with an overview of the budget, and we'll take the first dozen or so slides. Then Director Southerton will give us a deeper dive in the development process of the draft budget. This will include a budget overview, our funding outlook, draft budget highlights, and next steps as we work together in the development of the 24-25 budget. The proposed budget for 24-25 represents the financial and instructional goals set by the school board, the budget committee members, staff, community, and our students. This budget largely maintains the basis of our instructional and operational structures and continues investments in support of our recently developed Roadmap 27 strategic plan goals. This presentation will describe our current situation and explain our revenue sources and our anticipated expenses over the next year. In addition to outlining the changes in our financial condition, we will describe Centennial's fiscal priorities and policies, as well as the 5 goals for student success and the 4 pillars describing the capabilities that we will develop to achieve these goals as outlined in Roadmap 27. Next slide. As indicated on the slide, our commitment to maintaining robust academic programming and supporting student success remains unwavering, despite the challenges posed by the conclusion of federal pandemic relief funds and the imperative to reduce our rate of deficit spending. Moreover, strategic investments in facilities and infrastructure facilitated by the 2020 bond underscore our commitment to enhancing safety, security, and learning environments across the district. Prudent fiscal management in recent years has bolstered our ending fund balance, providing a foundation for resilience in the face of future funding uncertainties. Despite anticipated roll-up costs and a modest increase in state funding, Centennial must contend with a significant budget gap, necessitating strategic adjustments to maintain financial equilibrium. Careful stewardship of resources and managing programs for superior student outcomes remains our primary focus. Next slide. I'll talk a little bit about our strategic plan development, as this is foundational to our budget process. Centennial Strategic Plan was developed during a multi-month process throughout last school year, the 22-23 school year. The strategic plan acts as a roadmap for our school system and where we are heading. Its primary aim is to align all stakeholders on a shared vision, common goals, and a unified direction for our district's educational efforts. As an accompanying part of that process, the district commissioned a comprehensive equity audit at the district, department, and school level to assess the extent of equitable access, opportunity, and outcomes for our students, to remove barriers and plan for improvement. That audit involves surveying students, families, and staff, reviewing data, and 2-day school site visits conducted by the National Center for Urban School Transformation at San Diego State University, who included observation of student learning and staff work sessions, as well as facilitation of student, parent, and family focus groups. The tremendous input that each of these groups provided played a pivotal role in the development of our 4-year plan. This defined Centennial's long-term priorities, goals, and objectives in developing Roadmap 27 as we aligned to advance the performance and the academic success of our students' experience in Centennial schools. Next slide. The state school fund is the primary revenue source for schools in Oregon. You may recall us talking about it at the budget work session a few months ago. It's funded on a 2-year cycle known as a biennium. In the upcoming 24-25 school year, the state will be entering the 2nd year of this biennium, meaning that the state's allocation for K-12 education is known. The current adopted state school fund is $10.2 billion. That's allocated across all school districts in the state. Those funds are provided in a stair-step fashion, with 49% of funds allocated in the 1st year of the biennium, so this year, and 51% in the 2nd year to account for increased costs year over year. As I mentioned earlier, Centennial expenses continue to exceed revenues. As you likely know, through a thoughtful blend of decision-making and challenging circumstances, over the past few years, the district has developed a more robust ending fund balance, allowing the district to better withstand the impacts of future funding shortfalls and fluctuations while maintaining strong academic programming and support for students. Centennial has incorporated a planned fund balance spend down into its budget formula. The delta, or the difference between the current level of service and the cost to provide those services, is developing a wider and wider gap. This proposed budget begins the necessary reconciliation of this gap. As part of the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, or ESSER as it's known, as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, Centennial has been fortunate to have remaining funds to devote to unfinished learning and facilities improvements this school year. However, these funds must be spent by this September, after which they will expire. So these funds will no longer be available to us after the new school year starts. Next slide. As previously mentioned, our key cost driver as an organization is personnel. Education by its nature is a people business, so naturally the majority of a district's expenses are incurred in compensating the people who work with and support our students on a daily basis. Upward pressure on wages over recent years continues to put stress on our ability to meet all students' needs in the district. Further, Centennial continues to serve a large population of students who need a non-traditional school environment or outplacement due to a variety of factors, including medical or behavioral needs that exceed the district's service level competency. We expect the cost to provide these services will increase by nearly $1 million in the 2024-25 school year. After several years of declining enrollment and declining fund balance, the district experienced severe funding shortages in 2020. To stabilize the district, the Board of Education, assisted by individual members of the Budget Committee, created a fund balance policy in the 2020-21 school year. The administration worked with the board to identify strategies, sell surplus assets, and make difficult but necessary reductions to put the district on a path towards stable financial footing. After 4 years of work, with the support of the board, budget committee, and district staff, the district's reserves are adequate and stable at this point. Continued diligence, responsible oversight, and prudent budgeting are essential to safeguarding the financial integrity of the district and sustaining services for students. Excessive spending or lax fiscal management could jeopardize the progress achieved in recent years and return Centennial to a precarious financial position. Next slide. And as you know, on the momentous day of May 19th, 2020, voters in the Centennial School District approved a $65 million bond that prioritized the most critical infrastructure identified by a facilities analysis, community input, and a long-range facilities planning committee that focused on repairing and replacing roofs, boilers, foundations, windows and flooring, and other school facilities improvements, upgrading school safety and security systems, adding gymnasiums to 4 schools without dedicated gyms, and repurposing Oliver Elementary back into a middle school, including library, science, locker rooms, and career and technical improvements. With the bond's passage, the district secured a nearly $7.5 million matching grant from the Oregon School Capital Improvement Matching, or AWESOME program, stretching bond dollars further and providing an extra boost to undertake additional capital improvements. 4 years later, our bond work is essentially complete. In fact, we recently sent all district residents a special edition report to the community showcasing the completed projects, and you'll see that posted there on the screen. Next slide. Now we'll shift into our budget overview. I'll address the first bullet, which is the budget priorities developed by the school board, budget committee, and administration. Director Southerton will take the subsequent slides, which include the current financial position of the district, our funding outlook, and draft budget highlights. Next slide. Over the next 2 slides, you will see the framework for Roadmap 27, which includes the 5 goals for student success and the 4 pillars describing the capabilities we will develop to achieve these goals. These focal areas are reflected in the budget, and Director Southerton will highlight specific connections during his portion of the presentation. Next slide. On this slide, you'll see the 5 goals for student success, which are Goal 1, building a strong foundation pre-K to 3. Goal 2, supporting every student's well-being and inclusion. Goal 3, centering student voice, empowerment, and leadership. Goal 4, ensuring equitable access to high-quality academics. And Goal 5, preparing every student for their future. Next slide. On this slide, in kind of small print, you'll see the 4 pillars describing the capabilities we will develop to achieve these goals. These are culturally responsive, student-centered teaching and learning, collaboration with families and community, professional learning, growth and wellness, and comprehensive systems of excellence. Next slide. Finally, the Budget Committee further directed the administration to include the following priorities, which Director Southerton will speak to momentarily. And then after this portion, we'll take a small break for questions. Paul, if you can go ahead and speak to this.
Oh, wonderful. So the Budget Committee provides additional priorities to consider, which is community use of facilities, after-hour access, especially to the new gymnasiums, continuing co-curricular activities, student voice and leadership opportunities, music, arts, and athletics, supporting and continuing to enhance career and technical educational programs and partnerships, and then ensuring we had transportation and opportunities for students and staff to take field trips without needing to raise funds, and opportunities to support additional activities and learnings for students through the transportation fund.
Great, thank you. Next slide. Oh, maybe we go back to the last slide and we'll just stop there. And with that, I'll pause here for questions. That was a lot of information that I shared before turning it over to Director Southerton to walk us through the current financial position of the district. So I'll yield to Chair Harden.
James, thank you. I'll go around the room just to make sure everybody gets heard in no particular order. We'll start off with Claudia Andrews, Director Andrews.
No questions at this time.
Thank you. Director Shields.
No questions at this time.
Thank you. Myrna Jensen.
I do not have any questions right now.
Thank you. Director or Board Chair Slawski.
Will you go back to the last slide really quick that talked about what the Budget Committee's priorities were?
Absolutely.
Okay. Perfect. I just wanted to take a peek at this, and then I will keep that in mind for my question after the budget presentation.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Rod Betcher, any questions?
Of course. I was wondering, after going through kind of the high-level look at funds that we have coming into us and the cost drivers, are these all the funds that are possible, that are options for the district? Other school districts have had bonds that they have passed for that sort of thing. And I guess until we get into the middle of the budget, we may not know what we are going to want to fund that we're cutting. So I just wondered if there were other forms of revenue that aren't necessarily state driven, but that other school districts have gotten to promote programs or some of their goals for the near term.
Thank you
Yeah,
for
I'm
the
happy to take
question.
it on.
I'll defer to Director Southerton for the response.
Thank you, Superintendent Lawrence. I'll take a run at it and let you clean up anything that that needs to be cleaned up. It's a great question, Rod. Thanks for asking it. I think one of the potential opportunities that we've identified within the district is we don't have a dedicated grant writer, and other districts do. And that's an opportunity because to have somebody dedicated to go out and seeking additional funding sources that, as you say, are not provided necessarily at the state level. You mentioned bonds, or perhaps maybe a local levy is another thing that would be potentially something that we could engage our community with to see if there's support. There are communities around us that do have a local levy, operational levy, so that supports ongoing additional operational costs, such as additional specialized teacher positions and other student support positions and things like that. So there's definitely opportunities, but I would say the latter, the local levy, usually requires substantial engagement with our community just to understand their support and understand where they believe additional funding may be helpful to the district.
Southerton, is the bond that we got for building substantially different in its makeup and payback and financial responsibility to the district and the community different of those two types of bonds or levies?
Yeah, so one is a levy, for a bond. The bond is a debt. It's an authorization to sell bonds, and then get that principal money up front to go make the investments in capital structure and improvement, right? And you're taking out debt, and the community has approved an additional taxation above the constitutional limit, or Measure 5 or other limit on taxation to pay back that bond. A levy is similar in that the community approves an additional taxation level, but there's not any debt involved. That money is collected each year and spent each year because it's an operational levy. It's not for capital improvements. So they are similar, they're analogous, but they are different.
Bond we got for the construction had a time limit in which we had to spend it. Do local levies have the same kind of limits, or can you buy different lengths of limits that you can get the funds from?
You don't get all the funds up front. You only get 1 year at a time. Funds do roll over if you have them in your ending fund balance, but you're not getting, and it's usually a 5 or 10 year limit, local option levy. And so every year you're getting a portion. You have a 10-year authorization for that. So it does run out at the end of 10 years, and you have to put it on the ballot again and seek approval for renewing a local option levy. But you don't receive all the money up front. You don't receive 10 years worth of the.
Oh, no. Yeah. And that can lead to funny stuff.
But good questions. There is potential to seek support from our community for a local option.
And I might add as a editorial note that we had great response from the community on the building bond. And if we have other things in the community which are wanted by the community, a levy might be a way to focus the needs of and desires of the community beyond what we have gotten together as all of the committees that we put together when we try to make these assumptions. We develop the assumptions for the budget that we do every year. There may be an underlying desire to have some things addressed on a onesies and twosies kind of a basis. And I'm thinking that we had got a great response from the community on the bond. And I know we have another bond coming up, but I think an articulated amount of money for some of the deficiencies that the district has noted in the last 2 or 3 years might be a success if we would just put some thought into that and put it out there as a, because I don't think we've ever talked about it too much in terms of the boards that I've been on. So it would be a novel thought to kind of explore that.
Rod, you're speaking my language. I have been bringing this up for a little bit now, and I'm really excited. I would love to partner with you and talk a little bit more about ways that we could use a local option levy.
I'll shake your hand on that.
All right, thanks for teeing that up.
Thanks, Rod. We'll move on. Michael Newman, any questions?
No, especially after those great questions from Rod. Any questions I would have had her answered. So
Thank you. Director Stanley, any questions? Nope. All right, thank you. Karen Wolfgang, any questions?
None at this time. Thank you, though.
Thank you. And Amber Topham, any questions?
None at this time. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. I think I got everyone. So I don't have any questions either, so I'll hand it back to Director Southerton.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chair Harden. And I can't see everyone on my screen, so if we do have any hands coming up kind of mid-presentation, if you could let me know, that would be great. So jumping into the kind of main event, the presentation of the proposed budget, we'll be discussing the general fund, major special funds, and short-term funds. So the budget has three major components to it. We have the general fund, which is the foundation of the budget, supporting all students and makes up the bulk of our activity. Then you have special funds that support specific needs, and then one available short-term or focused intervention or project funds. General fund, or Fund 100 in the budget book, is found on pages 4 through 58 and is the foundation of all the activities in the budget. It makes up approximately 85% of district spending and is the least restrictive and supports the majority of education and operations. It's important to note that this fund is highly variable and is dependent on enrollment and how our students present. You can think of the general fund as the functional core. It's largely comprised of resources from local taxes and the district's allocation of the state school fund, and it funds the majority of positions in the district, such as teachers, educational assistants, support staffs, principals, and other positions. It supports general education, special education, student wellness, co-curricular activities, training, operations, and much more. It funds core programs to support all students, and unfortunately, it is not growing as fast as inflation, which is requiring us to depend more and more on special funds than grant funds. The general fund, as I said, is largely dependent on enrollment. And as you can see from the information on this very busy slide, our enrollment unfortunately has decreased by approximately 700 students since the beginning of the pandemic. And as Superintendent Owens shared in the budget message, we were experiencing some declining enrollment even before the pandemic began. But just this decline of 700 students over the 5 short years, or 9.1%, accounts for roughly a $9 million drop in funding that Centennial would have received if enrollment had not declined by this amount. The good news is enrollment has stabilized this year. We're not seeing real growth yet, but we anticipate that with this stabilization and the growth in the district, we may start to see some growth and some recovery of that enrollment in future years. However, since we haven't seen real growth, we will just receive our 4% roll-up cost from the state-approved biennium funding. So the district anticipates receiving $58.8 million of a general fund allocation from the state school fund next year versus the $56.7 million we received this year. Unfortunately, with expenses increasing by 6% across all funds, there are required ongoing adjustments to find efficiencies and keep deficits manageable, as Superintendent Owens shared in his budget message. I'll highlight some of the major expense increases that are included in that 6% that you'll find throughout the budget document that was shared with you all earlier and is now available on the website and available in the district office. Substitute expenses to cover absenteeism, training, and vacancies are increased by $650,000 in the proposed budget. This is reflective of the increased substitute costs we're experiencing this year. We have still 2 months to go in the school district, and we have already exhausted our substitute budget at this point in time, or exceeding our substitute budget. And so just anticipating that high utilization will continue, we're trying to budget for that appropriately next year. You have annual increases in compensation and benefits, including step increases, benefit premium contribution increases, as well as cost of living increases. You'll note the sub-bullet point 3 there on COLAs of no less than 2.242%. We are in negotiations currently with our classified staff so that we know that 2.42 is the amount for our licensed staff, our administrative staff, and others, but we don't know where we will end up with our classified staff. Additional major increases in expenses for next year in the proposed budget are new curriculum that is culturally reflected and updated. We have transportation, fuel increases, and insurance increases. You'll see increases in utilities and waste, which are largely due to price increases, not usage. And then another big increase was a change in unemployment law and eligibility for employees of school districts who are now may be eligible for unemployment during the fix. Overall, we see expenses in the proposed budget for the general fund at 81.4 million, and we see revenue at 78.8 million. This mismatch of expenses being greater than revenue results in a negative financial position or $2.6 million deficit for next year. We are fortunate to have managed resources responsibly over recent years, as Superintendent Owens touched on, which is allowing us to largely maintain all current service levels and avoid drastic cuts, such as those that you may be observing in neighboring districts. However, we understand that deficits are not sustainable over time, and school districts in Oregon require adequate funding from the legislature that reflects the increase in costs to provide the same level of service. We're hopeful that our combined advocacy with our union partners and school districts in COSA across the state will result in more adequate funding in future bienniums. Next, I'll touch on special funds supporting specific needs in the budget document. You'll recall from our budget work session that special funds, which include sections 200 through 700 or pages 59 through 108 in the budget book, are restricted funds for specific purposes and allowable uses. These funds often have a specific timeline for utilization, such as an annual allocation or a biennium multi-year allocation. These funds have limited ability to carry over from year to year, often known as use it or lose it funds, and they support specialized programs or functions, such as the Classroom Improvement Fund, High School Success or Measure 98 Fund, the Student Success Act or Student Investment Account, Title funds, and others. The Student Success Act is one of, if not the largest, one of our largest special funds. Centennial's allocation is $5.8 million roughly in recurring funding, and it's dedicated and designed to improve achievement in schools and to reduce achievement gaps in historically underserved and marginalized student populations. There are 5 goals that are deployed to address these issues or these goals for the Student Success Act, 5 strategies. And they're listed here below: increasing academic support, increasing social, emotional, mental, and behavior supports, establishing more optimal staffing levels, providing access and expansion of electives and co-curricular activities, and providing instructional coaching and targeted professional development for staff, and additional curriculum materials to enhance core instruction. Centennial's plan includes using these funds to support Centennial Virtual Academy to support students who prefer a non-traditional learning environment, learning specialists to lower caseload and provide additional support, additional principals to provide support at targeted schools with high need and high absenteeism. You'll see the abbreviations there listed as Powell Butte, Park Lane, Button Creek, and Oliver Middle School. Instructional coaches to ensure consistent instruction in all schools, behavior specialists and multi-tiered systems of support coach, social workers and mental health supports, counselors to improve ratios and address high needs, updated curriculum to support instruction, enhance co-curricular activities and student leadership activities at both middle schools, an English language learner teacher, and tuition for help placement serving students experiencing one or more disabilities that Centennial is unable to serve in districts. These are just some of the activities funded by the Student Investment Account. There are many more, but these are some of the major activities. The Classroom Improvement Fund is another special fund that you'll observe in the budget, in the proposed budget book doc. This was adopted last year by the Budget Committee and the school board, and this fund is dedicated to improving the learning spaces, both classrooms and other learning environments of Centennial students. Remodeling classrooms to better support learning, replacing furniture and equipment that exceeded its useful life, improving lighting and other classroom improvements. Major funding will be established or is in the proposed budget document to remodel and renovate 4 classrooms at Patrick Lynch this summer. Those are both 4th grade classrooms and both 5th grade classrooms, as well as the music room, which is serving all students at Patrick Lynch. Improvements will include new windows, casework, flooring, cabinets and sinks, ceilings, student desks, and chairs to completely renovate the spaces. These are some renderings of what these spaces are going to look like after they've been improved. And for those of you that have been in our schools, you can see that improvement, while maintenance has been done and we've been taking care of our facilities, improvement is needed, and this will make a big difference for these classrooms. So we hope that this fund will continue and to support those for many years to come. High School Success, or Measure 98, as it is commonly known, will provide $1.9 million of recurring funding, and it's dedicated to establishing or expanding career and technical educational programs, college-level education opportunities, and dropout prevention. These funds are used to support CTE teacher positions, CTE equipment, additional spaces at the Center for Advanced Learning, dropout prevention, 8th grade counts, and many more activities. Title funds, the allocations have not been distributed from the federal government at this point in time, but the proposed budget captures that we anticipate them to be very similar, if not minorly reduced from last year, due to the decline in enrollment. And now I'll talk about short-term funds, which are funds for specific projects or focused interventions and are very short-term in nature. The major one that we've been talking about for the last couple of years is the American Rescue Plan, or the ESSER funds. The Centennial School District has about $4 million of the remaining of these one-time funds, which are dedicated to student learning, student staff safety, continuity of learning. These must be spent by September 30th, 2024, and the remaining funds in our budget were previously dedicated to unfinished learning, summer school, and expanded learning opportunities, as well as ventilation improvements in our buildings, which include some mechanical improvements as well as window and door replacement. And I'll next discuss major budget changes for 23-24. So again, just the major changes overall that you'll observe in the document and where you can find them are going to be the contractual salary steps, COLAs, and benefits. They result in an overall increase of 5.8% year over year, and you'll find those across all funds and in all functions of the budget document. You'll find investments in smaller class sizes, pre-K to 3rd grade, in the general fund section of the budget on page 6. You'll find investments in building access and cleaner schools in the care and upkeep of buildings section, 2542 of the general fund on page 42. Increased cost for outplacement students' medical and behavioral needs that exceed the district's service level competency, we will find in the student investment account on page 76. Sunsetting of pandemic funds, or the ESSER funds that I just touched on, you can find on page 78 and 79. Investments in classrooms and student learning spaces, you can find in the Classroom Improvement Fund on page 92. And completion of capital construction bond projects, you can find on page 99. We also are pleased to share again that we've received another seismic improvement grant, which for Oliver Middle School, which you can find in the capital improvement section on page 102. And then changes to unemployment eligibility for staff during breaks, you'll find them in the risk management fund on page 109. There are some minor changes in the budget document as well that you'll observe as you go through the proposed budget. We welcome feedback on it. We have some redistribution of FTE within special education across the district, across as many functions. We've had some alignment of work between functions 1220, 1250, and 2115. So what you'll notice is some minor increases and decreases in those, but overall they balance out, and that's just better matching up with the roles of the staff and what they're doing, or what they're anticipated doing next year, and how they'll be supporting students within the special education environment. Adjustments to school staffing happen incrementally as enrollment changes kind of ebb and flow, and you'll see that throughout the budget document, but we also have the school summary pages at the end of the budget document. And you'll see a correction to an FTE from 1.0 to 0.5 in function 21-22 in the general funds. And that's just recognizing that that position is not fully in the general fund. Half of that position is funded in the general fund, and then half of that position is funded in the grants fund. So not material changes, but changes nonetheless, and we'd like to share this. Overall, the administration is pleased to state that this is a student-focused, student-centered budget that's being proposed this evening. And we make that assertion based on looking at our strategic plan goals as well as the goals established by the budget committee. The proposed budget is forecasted to result in kinder classes of 23 students to 1 teacher ratio. That is across all 6 elementary schools. So you'll see some lower, some higher, but the average will be 23 is what we're forecasting at this point in time. First grade will be 23 as well. Second is 24 and third is 25. Important to know that these are forecasts, and if I was that great at knowing the future, I would pick winning lottery ticket numbers and we'd have amazing schools because I don't need all the money. But these are forecasts based on what we're seeing with the enrollment trends right now and what we're seeing with the Population Research Center report that we received when we were going through the comprehensive boundary adjustment 2 years ago. Has been fairly accurate in what we've been able to forecast the last couple of years. Goal number 2, supporting every student's well-being and inclusion. This is addressed through district supports, including school psychiatrists, social workers, learning specialists, behavior specialists, educational assistants, assistant principals, and professional development. Centering student voice, empowerment, and leadership. We have student focus groups, co-curricular activities, clubs, and student council opportunities. The budget supports stable class sizes and enhanced electives and data curriculum, which supports our goal number 4, ensuring equitable access to high-quality academics. And then goal number 5, preparing every student for the future of professional development to enhance academic programming, career and technical opportunities, and Centennial Virtual Academy, among other strategies in the budget. To support the budget committee priorities, we have continued funding for the additional custodians that we added in the last budget for community use of facilities after hours and weekend access, especially to the new gyms. Continued funding for co-curricular activities, student voice and leadership, music arts, athletics, and clubs. Career and technical education funding through Measure 98 and non-school success. Transportation opportunities, continuing with that recruitment and assistant position in the transportation department, focused on making sure that we have adequate staffing level, which we continue to work for. Overall, in the proposed budget, the overall anticipated ratio of students to teachers is 25-1 at the elementary level. You saw it lower at the pre-K through 3. And it is a little bit higher at 4 and 5, but overall still at 25-1. Middle school at 25-1 and high school at 25-1. This is an overall average of student to teacher ratios, especially with the middle and the high school section. You'll notice more variability in that as you have elective classes in other classes, core classes, where you may see lower in some elective, you may see higher in a PE class, but overall the ratio is anticipated to be 25. The proposed budget maintains all current service levels for students. It leverages special funds to support students' mental health supports, learning specialists, special education supports, smaller class sizes, and investments to close learning gaps. It continues investments in co-curricular activities and student leadership opportunities that we've brought back over the last 3 years. It makes investments in improving learning environments, and it does require a $2.6 million deficit to support. Just want to take a minute to express appreciation to the business office team. So in particular, Debbie LeGros, our Centennial budget analyst, who works diligently and very hard on this budget and putting everything together and working with us. So thanks to Betty and Calvin Bellick, our CSD accountant, who works closely with Betty and the entire business office team who supported this work that I'm pleased to share with you this evening. I understand that was an awful lot of information. I'm happy to revisit any slides you may want to go back to and welcome any questions you may have.
All right. Thank you, Paul. That's a lot of info. We'll go around the room, just like I'll call on people for questions just to make sure everyone has a chance to have their voice heard. I'll go just in order of my screen. Board Chair Solowski, there's the top left.
Thank you. I have two questions. Is this where I would like say a page number and ask a question about a specific thing?
Absolutely. If you'd like to, I've got my copy of the budget right here.
Great. So on page 56, it talks about enterprise and community services. There's an increase in, and I know this was talking, one of the things that we had was increased use of our facilities. And this one looks really specific to the supervision of the and public use of the pool. Is this potentially where we could see some support for other facilities? And then also, it's quite a jump in dues and fees, and I'm curious who we're paying dues and fees to.
Yeah, excellent question. So this was or has historically been dedicated to the swimming pool in particular, as it's been open for the summer to the public. And in the fall and other times on occasion and doing swim lessons and other things like that. And so traditionally that's where the majority of these expenses have been dedicated to. With that in mind, you know, we potentially look at that and see if there's expanding that as an opportunity. In regards to the access to the gyms, that really was different than the swimming pools because the idea, I think that was in conversation with the budget committee, is expanding like weekend option. And do we have somebody that can open the gym and close the gym? Can we partner with Sun to do activities and things like that? And so we captured those kinds of expenses in the care and upkeep of buildings, the 2542 function for the gyms in particular. But I welcome any feedback you may have on that.
No, that's good. I think that the other question that's helpful. The other question that I have is on page 134. Line item 332. We talked about increasing transportation opportunities for extracurricular activities. And so one, it looks actually like a decrease. And then two, I kind of had this question as I was looking at this, and this is just an example. Is that decrease, like I would love to see where we are at with what we've spent so far this year. Is it a decrease because we're just not seeing that we're spending up to $16,000 on that? Or is it a decrease, a planned decrease? And then if so, part of me wants to question that because we've had, as we have changed our league that we're in, it has actually increased our high school right to have to go to now we have to go to Hood River and Hillsborough. So we're playing schools that are a lot further. So I kind of like that kind of is all my questions wrapped into just that one example.
Wonderful. Say the page number for me one more time, please.
I'm sorry, 134.
Thank you so much. Captured the detail of your question, and actually wanted to circle back on the previous question. The dues and fees were you had asked about dues and fees of the swimming pool, and that was with the city and the county for licensing and registration, and that's more reflective of the actual cost for all the dues and fees. We've been under budgeting, unfortunately, in the last couple of years.
Got you.
Product was not completing as we came out of COVID. But in regards to 134,
that makes sense.
And you're looking specifically at the student transportation other than home to school.
Yeah.
Great. So Great question. And what this is going to say is this is in the general fund allocation. It's not at the budget in totality. And because academic co-curricular activities is in the student investment account or the special revenue funds as well as the general fund, what we're not capturing in the summary page at 134 is that there are additional funds in the student investment account for those transportation costs. So that's something that I worked with Dante in there and Principal Miller on quite a bit as we were preparing this budget to make sure we're more accurately capturing that increased transportation costs for co-curricular activities and other opportunities for students. So 14.5 represents what's in the general fund, but there's additional dollars in the student investment account to support those.
Okay.
I
And so
think
that increase in the funds coming from the student investment account, like, are they taking those funds from somewhere else to be able to put them there?
Great question. More than anything, with the student investment account, one of the major strategies was bringing back co-curricular activities, student government, student leadership. And so we've allocated a placeholder of dollars, but that was in anticipation of the activities. And so we're just refining that kind of year to year. So there's no offsetting cuts that came with that. It's just better getting closer. I don't want to undersell it because there's a tremendous amount of work that goes into the budget, and it is our best plan when it's made here in April for what's going to happen September through June of next year. And so we do incremental change from year to year.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank
No
you.
further questions.
Love the engagement. Nice work. Moving on, Director Shields.
Is there any way to anticipate what we might be incurring in costs for the new rules on the unemployment?
That was captured. Great question. There's a couple worksheets that school business officials have been working on, putting in your number of FTE, putting in your number of 10-month employees and 11-month employees, looking at some historical guidelines. And so it is a little bit of best guess at this point in time.
Okay.
And so we've allocated $400,000, which we think is prudent and responsible to make sure that we're not caught off guard or overextended or end up not being able to fund all the claims. So I anticipate it's going to be in that realm.
We have no historical data, so there's nothing for us to really work with. So we will be starting with this will be getting our historical data in. So we'll be carefully monitoring that. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. That was my question.
Director Andrews.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. The first one is pretty simple. So it piggybacks on Rod's original question from the last Q&A section. So what did you assume about any additional Medicaid funding related to the new, is that because you put that bullet point in about behavioral supports? Are we expecting additional Medicaid funding?
Excellent question. So I tend to be very conservative when I'm budgeting. I tend to under forecast or take kind of worst case scenario on the revenue side and then worst case scenario on the expense side. So I have not forecasted much in increase in the Medicare reimbursement at this point in time because the rules are still somewhat opaque. The process is still somewhat opaque, maybe 9 to 12 months before it actually materializes in measurable revenue increases for us. The increased supports are coming from the allocation of the student investment account or student success account. So we do have that revenue from the Student Success Act, and that's where most of those supports have come from.
Okay. And this one is a little more complicated, and it also is generated based on Rod's question. You mentioned the fact that we don't have a grant writer. Have you done any analysis yet of the costs of having a grant writer versus what we might be able to generate in terms of income from that?
Excellent question. We're just in early days of that analysis. I don't know if Superintendent Owens has anything to add on that. I know it's been some topic of conversation that even predates me in the district here. having a dedicated grant writer. Not sure, James, yeah.
Yeah, I could say that Dr. Coakley and I had conversations about that when he was here as superintendent, and then things got sideswiped with the pandemic. So I think we're kind of reestablishing our footing and looking at new potential positions. So that basically I would concur with what Director Southerton said. Something that we will analyze, but we don't have a cost benefit analysis of at this point.
So I'm just going to give a little bit of input, which is because you have, I think, 2.6 million of deficit spending, and I know that I've seen your forecast that that's only going to increase year over year with current, either it's going to increase or we're going to make some pretty significant cuts in future years. It seems to me like this is the year to take it on so that by the following year, when we are really facing some significant challenges, because I don't think we're facing significant challenges this year, we might have actually generated or be on the cusp of generating some additional income through that process. So this might be the year to kind of do the analysis and take that leap. That's all I have.
It's an excellent suggestion. I'm curious what the rest of the budget committee, what the take on that is, and is that feedback for the administration that we should consider that when we come back to you in a month?
I would concur with Claudia. Be more proactive in this particular situation than not. You've indicated that you are conservative in terms of determining how much revenue comes in, and so you don't want to overshoot the revenue, but you don't want to overshoot even more the expenses. I mean, you don't want to you underestimate the expenses so they come to due. So this is one way to bring those more into alignment. Your conservative nature to underestimate the revenue, and then the additional revenue that can come from having a revenue or a grant writer in the district to be able to do that for us. So I think we have to kind of balance our conservativeness and our liberalness in a way that people might not say, "Hey, you've got money left over at the end," or how did we get so much into debt? And I think we have to find some safety valves within the makeup of a budget to not get caught with our trousers down, as it were.
Yeah, absolutely. We have to have sound financial management. And so I guess to clarify, when I say conservative, I'm not taking, absolute like lowballing revenue by any sense of the imagination. The revenue that we have is, as a local government agency in a school district, it's a public forecast on what we're going to get from the state school fund next year. It's for everyone to see, and it's the number that we're using in the budget. I guess that was just in regards to especially potential new revenue, such as the Medicare reimbursement or something like that, which is unproven, uncertain, and has no historical factors by anything. So I just can't count on something like that, because if we make commitments for that and it doesn't come through, we're in the world of hurt. But no, I hear what you're saying and what everybody else is saying. I appreciate that feedback. That with the, I guess maybe to summarize, with the stable financial footing that we're on, this might be the year, as Director Andrews said, to make that investment, maybe front load it so it starts paying for itself in future years. Is that kind of a summary of what I heard?
Missy, Denise Wright is in the gallery and has offered to speak to this topic a little bit as well, if the chair is okay with that.
Good morning, everyone, or good evening, everyone. I think Director Southerton did speak to many aspects, specifically when it comes to the potential Medicaid billing. We are in a much better place than many districts because we have current processes in place. Really, the things that will come down to it is TSPC and the Oregon Health Authority are still sorting out the licensure aspect, because this is opening up billing possibilities for staff right now who are currently licensed through TSPC and not the Oregon Board. So once we have that piece confirmed, then we will need to work with staff. And so we're unsure if we'll be able to bill any dollars this year, or if it'll be getting everybody trained and up to speed. The hope would be that we would have some folks billing before the end of the year, and that part's still unknown. So I think this year will be an opportunity to expand, and then we'll be able to capture and get a good idea of what that will look like going forward.
So perhaps is that, sorry to butt in, but is that possibly something that we might want to roll in at the end of the budget process rather than now preliminary? Because like you said, Director Southerton, there's no history, no knowledge of what it's going to be and how it would work or anything, or if it would work even.
Yeah, I heard the question go to Director Southerton, and I would probably concur. At this point, it really is too early to attach a dollar amount to it. And I could see at this time next year, we definitely would have a much better idea.
No, I meant at the end of this budget process this
gotcha.
year for next year. That's the question. Or do we just let it ride this year and then wait until next year?
Apologies. My feedback would be, it is a little bit of conflating two different issues. One is the grant writer position, and that's kind of a question in and of itself. And then the other is the Medicaid reimbursement. The Medicaid reimbursement would be additional revenue that we would be able to recognize. And then we do have contingency built into the budget. So if that were to come through, or we thought something was moving forward very quickly, the board could take action and authorize that contingency to be deployed in the form of additional, reimbursable services or positions that could be added. So I think we're covered on the Medicaid side. It would really be the grant writer expense if the budget committee wanted to direct the administration to budget to have a grant writer position, with the understanding or the hope that it would bring in more revenue and it would fully pay for itself and more, eventually. And I think the administration could do some work with Portland Public and other districts that have similar positions. So it would be informed, and we could do that lift over the next year. But we would allocate it in the budget if that was the direction of the budget again.
Paul. All right. Well, Rod, do you have any other questions while we're at it?
Oh, yeah. Got a couple of softballers, and then I got a couple of other ones to kind of go back on some of the information Paul gave us. Just to refresh my memory, and it's really a two-part question after the first answer, is the budget equal to, that we see in all of the other pages, equal to the salary plus the benefits? So when we see that number there, is that number inclusive of all the costs for those employees that put together their income, their salary and their benefits? Or are the benefits, I'm trying to look fast, Rose has gotten me thinking that I haven't had a chance to read the whole budget yet.
Are you referring to the 85% estimate that we provided during the presentation, or are you looking at a specific page in the proposed?
No, I'm not looking at it. I'm looking at all the specific pages and looking at the column that says proposed 24-25 budget, and they have a number down there, and it gives not the taxes, but it gives the licensed teachers cost.
Yeah.
Let's say that it's 90,000. Is that 90,000 with benefits, or what 90,000 without benefits?
Great question. That is just a salary cost. The benefits is captured below in the 200 level object codes where it says 200 employees.
Okay, I see it.
So you have the PERS costs, Social Security, and other payroll costs, which includes unemployment, workers' comp, etc. And then you have conventional employee benefits, which are the healthcare benefits, etc.
Yeah, so I'm trying to. Okay, I've got some things going around in my head about those two, the relationship of those two. The other one, the other question that came to mind was the weighted enrollment. It says that it funds up to 11% of those that are uh, in our enrollment as being special eds. Does that mean that every percentage above that, or every person above that, are people that we are expending more money for and not getting reimbursed for? And so it's with the arbitrary 11% used by the state, are we getting additional costs that we have to absorb?
The short answer is yes. The allocation that we are given or provided with that 11% cap does not contribute a full weight for all the students that are experiencing one or more disabilities that we serve in the district. So
Do we see a large, and maybe since Denise is here, do we see a large, does our student population, is it common around the schools for the percentage of the students that are special ed? Or do we have more or less? How are we coming down within the rest of the schools in the area?
Right, within Multnomah County, we're running about in the middle because we're just about between 14 and 15% of our student population are students who experience disability. So we do have other districts. Portland Public is running at about 18%, and we have some other districts that are running at about 13%. The state average, if I remember last time I looked, is about 15%. So we're not that far off. And additionally, to your comment about the 11%, we do bring in funds for the high cost disability. So for students whose cost it is to educate is above a certain amount, we are able to submit and have funds reimbursed to us for that. Which
That's
doesn't
wonderful.
cover everything either, but
no,
funding that
I
comes back to us.
not with as high as they are. And I guess I'd say that if the state average is 15, it stands to reason, and of course it's not reasonable to think this, that they would fund up to 15%, and then everyone who was below that would not have to worry about, they would get it fully reimbursed, and then those of us that are above 15% would be not disadvantaged by having more than the average, because it can work out that way, just as a matter of statistically the anomalies you get out of that. So I'll leave that there. I just wanted to kind of put that out there because I hadn't thought about it that way.
I love your engagement and I love your questions. We do have other members of the committee I'd like to get to.
I'd like to apologize to the other committee.
Please circle back around.
Okay.
And follow up. I love your engagement though, but I'd love to hear from everyone.
I know. Apologize.
All right. No problem at all. Michael Newman, you're next.
All right, thank you. Couple of questions. I don't think they're too difficult. First one, just thinking about the cost of increased cost for salaries and benefits. And I was trying to make sense, looking through the budget quickly about staffing changes. It looks like staffing is largely flat across the schools, a little bit of an increase for elementary and kind of a decrease for high school. So is that 5.4% increase in salaries and 6.4 about for benefits? Is that mostly just increased cost of those things, increased pay? And
exactly. Yeah. That comprises of staff that are eligible for step increases, year-over-year step increases, and then COLAs.
Okay. Second, as I too, as Director Andrews was mentioning, curious about the thought of a grant writer. So just since you were saying, I'll mention that. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes here and trying to remember. We're looking at a $2.6 million deficit for next year, and I don't apologize if this is somewhere in the budget and I haven't seen it. What is the current deficit for this year?
The current deficit is estimated about $2 million.
Okay. I do remember as well, yeah, talking last year that it was looking like it would go up every year. Last question, hopefully this is easy. The special funds, you mentioned that some of them that they could potentially expire, or some of them have a expiry date. Do we have any of these bigger funds, the Student Success Act and the High School Success in particular? What I'm thinking, do we expect that they would be expiring anytime soon, or are those pretty reliable revenue sources?
Yeah, excellent question. So those will continue at this point in time. We're anticipating to continue going forward every year, but we have to spend the funds by September 30th or they're returned to the state. And there was recent news that came out today that it's actually going to be June 30th in future bienniums because of how the legislature appropriates their funding, and it expires by June 30th. So going forward, we need to be very mindful of that timeline.
Yeah.
If it's not spent, then whatever goes unspent goes back to the state, and then we get a new allocation the following year.
All right, great. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Excellent questions. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next up, Myrna Jensen.
All my questions have been answered. But I do want to acknowledge the hard work of the budget staff there at Centennial and administration for all the work they've done. It's not easy and nobody likes a deficit. I am very grateful that the school district is in much better place than some of our neighboring school districts and those across the state. I have friends and family who are going to be affected by that. Yeah, I know that this is not easy and it sucks. And down with ballot measure 5. I'm a kid from graduated in 1991, hate that measure. And if there's ever any chance to pull that thing, I will be first in line.
Thank you, Myrna.
Thanks, Myrna. Up next, Karen Wolfgang.
Oh, I am here. All right. So I am really wheels turning as well about the possibilities for additional revenue coming into the district. And I think there are several components of it beyond just a grant writer. But comparing and contrasting different options, like I'm honestly not sure what it's legal for a school district to do and not to do. But I was thinking, gosh, what if the school district had housing available, was able to, my brain is on a tear now. So thanks, Rod, for that. But we do have some facilities that community has identified a need for, like our swimming pool, that I'm sure the revenue stream wouldn't be significant, but being able to offer a women only swim for women in the Muslim community, who have to swim in a particular way, right? Like that could be really beneficial to the community and also potentially revenue positive for the district. So like there are some things that I'd like to see some thinking behind. How much would it cost us to staff it? How much would we potentially bring in? And then, does it make sense? Because that's behind the idea of a grant writer, is that thinking, like, how much does a grant writer get paid? How much would they potentially bring in? Like, what are the sources of funding beyond what we're getting from the state and from the work that y'all are already doing, which is great. And then does it pencil out? And on what time horizon? And so not to put more work on your plates, but those are kinds of things that I would be really interested in exploring. And again, thanks for the creativity, and yeah, this is not a problem that's going to go away anytime soon. So addressing it proactively is a really good idea. So thanks to everybody who supported that so far, and thanks to y'all for your good work. That's it.
Thank you.
Next up, Amber Topham.
All right. The two questions I had about the stuff was the first one was the going over budget for, was it this year for our subs that we've done? And if that's related to trainings, or is it related to something else? And if it is related to trainings, are we proactively setting that up so we have it in the budget so we're not going over budget again for this following year? That's the first one. And then the second one is looking into the grant writer. I think that's a great idea to generate another income source for our district and not continually having to rely on our savings account. At some point in time, we will not be able to continue that.
Excellent question. The overage in the substitute cost is not largely related to professional development or trainings. It's just an uptick in absenteeism that was not anticipated. Largely is what that increase is attributable. So, but great question. And it's getting back to more historical norms, I think, is what we're seeing as well. If you look, and I should have mentioned that in my presentation, we include the historical figures for ESS in the last two columns. And so, and for all budget expenses for that matter. So it's just a little bit of a return to historical norms. Unfortunately, we thought maybe it would improve, or it had improved. And then in regards to the grant writer, thank you for that feedback again. I think that's an excellent idea, and I appreciate the direction by the way today.
Cool. That's it for me.
Okay. Thank you. I'll read a couple of things in the chat. One from Director Stanley, who said she had no questions, but her comment is to keep student-facing services as a focus as we watch our budgeting and revenue. And then Karen Wolfgang, you have a couple other questions? I see them in the chat. Do you want to bring them up, or should I just read them?
You go ahead. I don't necessarily mean for us to address them in this forum right now. Just again, my brain's going over some of these questions. So they were expanding upon the idea of a grant writer. Like, what other ways could we use to get the services of a grant writer, partnering with other community organizations, or incentivizing, people who already work for the district or parents, et cetera, to apply for grants. Like, if we put a list of grants in front of people, obviously you need to have some skills, but what about the PTOs? What about? So there we are.
Excellent point. Thank you.
I had a question. My question was about the ADMW. How, if I read about dropping enrollment throughout the state in school districts. So if they set aside this money for education, but there's dropping enrollment all over the state, but they allocate based on enrollment, do they increase the ADMW so that all those funds are allocated, or do they just take the money back?
Great question. No, they do increase the allocation for ADMW. Unfortunately, it may be that you got a 5% increase in ADMW, so it may have gone from $10,000 to $10,500. So that's great on a per student basis. But if you lose 100 students, that's 10,000 times 100. So, the dollars decline a lot faster than they increase when you're having declining enrollment. But when you have stable enrollment, or you have growing enrollment in your district, but across the state it's dropping, it does absolutely benefit you because you get more on a per student basis. So a little bit longer answer, but yes, the 10.2 billion that was funded gets distributed amongst the remaining students. And so we get incremental a little bit more per student.
And then before we get on to possibly, how are we doing on time? It looks like we're cutting it, about time to go. So a couple of housekeeping things. We all have the budget. It was released virtually. If you want a paper copy, it is at the district office. Or if you want, I can go pick a bunch up and give it to you if you don't have time to head down there. By all means, it is virtual. That was emailed out. And then when do you need our replies, Paul?
Perfect segue. So calendar reminders should be displayed on the screen here. So we had the presentation of the proposed budget today. I'd like to allocate the next week to letting you go through it, ask questions, get feedback. And then if I could have that back, say, a week from tonight, by May 1st, that would be wonderful. It'd give us enough time to incorporate all that kind of dominoing that happens with tweaks and changes, and then come back to you with a proposed budget for your approval on May 22nd, which is our next meeting.
Want us to email to budget@csd28j.org like we have in previous years?
Yeah, that'd be great. Or feel free to email me directly. Both of those come to me. This is the public email address that we put out there for community members as well, and staff and others. So either works, my email or this budget@csd28j.
And then it is open to the public, so feel free to share with your accounting friends. Accounting friends, any other parties that may be interested in it. I was talking to my wife about the accounting kids in high school, if they want to dive into it. And it looks like we're there. So does anyone else have any last minute questions before we adjourn?
You're rushed. Go ahead.
There are some additional resources. I'll email those out to the budget committee members as well. If you'd like to know more about Oregon budget law, the PBAM codes, what they all mean that are in the budget book, and things like that, I'll be sending this out. And just gratitude for you all being on this committee and volunteering your time and asking great questions and the engagement that you've provided. So thank you all so much.
Thank you all for your time and engagement, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a great evening. We're adjourned.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Chair Harden.
Thanks, Jess.
Do we stay on? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Budget Committee.
Thank you, everyone.
Missy, can I do a sound check really quick?
I hear you, Denise. You sound good.
Great. I want to make sure the video, you can hear the sound. So let me just do a really quick. Hang on a second. Can you hear it? Can anyone hear it? No. Okay. That's at Centennial. Great. Well, let me try again. That's why we're doing it right now.
And Rose, I'll start the meeting again, record it when we're done, when you called it to order.
Okay. All right, here we'll go one more time. Let me know.
Centennial Transition Center. We believe in empowering every student.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet.
1, 2, 3. Well, we have a quorum and a full agenda. So, Missy, you want to get us started? Good evening, everyone. This meeting of the Centennial School Board is now in session. It's Wednesday, April 24th, 2024, and it's 7:31 p.m. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for those of you who are still holding on from the budget meeting. We'll try to get through this. I know it's a long night. At this point, I would love to hear a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I'm not sure if I can see everyone, but I believe the ayes have it. Missy, you're able to track that? Thank you. Next up, I'm really excited because in a week and a half, I believe, starting May 6th is Teacher Appreciation Week. So I would love to read a proclamation for you all. So, whereas teachers serve in partnership with the parents of our community's children, and whereas teachers strive to instruct students to read with comprehension, write with skill, and communicate effectively and responsibly in a variety of ways and settings, and whereas teachers teach our community's children to know and apply the core concepts and principles of mathematics, social, physical, and life sciences, civics and history, geography, arts, and health fitness. And whereas teachers inspire students to think analytically, logically, and creatively, and to integrate experience and knowledge to form reasoned judgments and solve problems. And whereas teachers help our students understand the importance of work and how performance, effort, and decisions directly affect career and educational opportunities. And whereas we support our teachers in their mission to educate the children of our community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Centennial School District Governing Board designates the week of May 6th through 10th as Teacher Appreciation Week. And be it further resolved that the Centennial School District calls on the community to join with it in personally thanking and recognizing certified staff for their dedication and devotion to their work. This message does not even nearly sum up the gratitude that and appreciation that I have for our teachers. Thank you all very much. Let's see here. Would anyone else like to say anything on that topic really fast? No. Before we move on, I would also like to do a quick acknowledgement in appreciation of Missy Grindle, who is our admin. It's Admin Professionals Day. And we could not do what we do without you either, Missy. So thank you very much. We appreciate you. Next up on the agenda is the approval of minutes.
Motion to approve as presented.
Second.
All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Excellent. The ayes have it. Next up on the agenda is public forum, but there's not a public forum during work session meetings. And so then let's move right into reports. Director or Superintendent Owens, would you like to introduce the first report?
Yes, thank you, Chair Slawski. Thank you. So Centennial Transition Center is one of our programs. It is a unique program in our organization. And so it is great that we are reinstituting our school reports this year because it allows us the opportunity to be able to feature the work of Centennial Transition Center and the specific things that they do for students who are ages 18 through 21. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Director of Student Services, Denise Wright. One of her many hats is as principal of Centennial Transition Center, and she will share with us a little bit about the work that's happening at the program. Thank you.
Good evening, school board members. We're really excited to be here. Missy, thank you for bringing forward several of the CTC staff that we have this evening with us here. So I would love to introduce, we have Chad Poller here, we have Devin Quatza, and I think Cindy LaRue is trying to get moved forward as a panelist. So Cindy is also here. The rest of the CTC staff is with us in spirit. So we'll get going. There we go. The CTC mission is all about teaching students to live, to work, and participate as independently as they are able within the community. I often say that CTC is like a special little gem that's within the district that not a lot of people know about, and they absolutely should because of the amazing work that happens on a daily basis for students. We have several goals at CTC, which in our alignment with Roadmap 27. These were developed last year during the end of the year data convening that occurred across the whole district. And 3 areas that emerged based on data that we reviewed was for students to feel connected, having community experiences, and employment. These are a part of students' integrated days every day and opportunities that are created throughout the week that once we talk about programming and partnership, you'll get to hear a little bit more about how the work supports these goals being actualized. We are going to get to see a little bit of CTC in action, and then after that, you'll be able to hear from Chad and Devin about day-to-day happenings at Centennial. And again, let me know if this is not loud enough.
We gotta streamline these.
Of course, we don't want the streamlining of the videos. Okay. Oh my goodness. This is why we test things out and then. All right. Hang on 1 second. Let me stop sharing for 1 minute. Sorry, the full screen button has disappeared from when we just met about 5 minutes ago. Sorry about that. All right. Anybody have any ideas of why the full screen on YouTube is not showing?
Go ahead and close the window and
Great.
restart it. Click it from the link.
Okay, thanks. Sorry. Seems like something that. There we go. Thanks, Albert. And let me make sure everybody can see it. Thanks for your patience. Sorry about that. All right. So Albert, it's interesting when I'm coming to share, then it's disappearing. Let me try this really quick. There we go. It's disappearing. Can everyone hear it? Nope. All right, thanks. I saw a head nod saying they could not hear that, and it's not showing that. All right, one more try. Let's try it. Sorry, everyone.
Okay.
We literally did try it before
We
the
did.
meeting started and it worked perfectly. So not your fault, Denise. You got this.
Oh my goodness. And if okay, Albert, can you do me a favor? Because each time it's doing this, and I know you also have it on your computer, are you queued up really quick? All right, let's see if we can try it that way.
Can you see the full screen?
We can see the full screen.
Perfect.
I don't know if we can hear it yet, though.
At Centennial Transition Center.
Albert, when you muted yourself, we can't hear it now.
Centennial Transition Center, also known as CTC. And I'm the Director of Student Services.
Give me a second.
Through focused
Should work now. Can you hear?
At Centennial Transition Center, we believe
Can you hear it now? No.
It's kind of acting like it's buffering. To age myself a little bit.
Nothing yet?
There's no sound.
Give me a second.
Albert, I'm going to try. I have the first link that you sent me that's not on the YouTube. So let's just try that and see if we can give it a go. This can work. All right.
At Centennial Transition Center, we believe in empowering every student every day. My name is Denise Ray, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm the building administrator for the Centennial Transition Center, also known as CTC, and I'm the director of student services. Through focused classroom instruction, community access and opportunities, students at CTC focus on their post-school outcomes. They have opportunities to explore where and how they want to live, to work, and to use their leisure time. We currently have about 35 students attending and 10 staff members.
Hi, my name is Felicia Miller, and I'm 19. I'm currently a student at CTC. I really like coming here because the people are my teachers and classmates are really nice, and I can be myself.
We equip our students with the tools they need to thrive independently by providing them with concrete skills connected to their post-school outcomes, which includes working on social and communication skills, as well as real-world applicable academics. From researching jobs and internships to resume writing and interview skills, we guide our students through every step of their journey into adulthood. Students learn the everyday skills of shopping, budgeting, cooking, navigating relationships, public transportation, community college, trade programs, and much, much more. At the Centennial Transition Center, every student is supported in striving towards their dreams to be as independent as possible.
Right. Thank you for the patience on that, everyone. So with that, I am going to turn it over, and we are going to focus on the 4 pillars that are in alignment with Roadmap 27. Chad is going to share a little bit about the instruction that takes place on a regular basis at Centennial School District. Or Centennial Transition Center. Take it away, Chad.
Yeah, mute Chad.
Chad, you're muted. There you go.
Well, there goes my intro monologue. Sorry. Yeah, so I don't want to take too much of anybody's time, especially with the technical difficulties that were going on. Sorry if there's any background noise. Got dogs and an 8-month-old here, so keep it brief and then we'll move on. Just want to touch highlights on a couple of topics. The community college connections. We currently have 5 students attending community colleges. And one of the highlights of that is one of our students is about to finish their welding certificate. Sorry. And they are finishing with nearly straight A's and are getting to walk in the spring graduation ceremony coming up this spring. Public transportation education. We currently, students access public transportation throughout the week for local field trips to the grocery store, library, and as well as our primary transportation on Friday outings. We also partner with RideWise to independently travel train students to access TriMet to get to and from different job sites throughout the day for their internships. And there's currently 7 students that we have independently travel trained. And then internships, there's too many to count. We're trying to go over that this afternoon. And just a few that we wanted to highlight were 5 students in the past 2 years were able to receive the Student Internship Program grant, which allowed them to secure a 40-hour paid internship at a location of their choosing. And some of those include Pet Supplies Plus, where we've got a couple of students, Bricks and Minifigs, Powell Butte Elementary, as well as Oliver Middle School. So unless Devin or Denise would like to add anything more, I will relinquish my time and we can move on.
Thanks for sharing those highlights, Chad. All right, Devin is going to share some highlights regarding the many, many, many community partnerships that we had, and Chad was able to allude to a few, and Devin will expand on that.
Hello. I feel like technology is so fun today. It just cracks me up. So we have many, as Denise was saying, partnerships. One of the things I think that our program tries to do is make connections within students' community. So then when they leave our program, they already have connections outside in the community. And so some of the partnerships that I've started, like Portland Parks and Rec, we've been partnering with them for 12 years now. And we work with them every single week and maintain all of our natural areas within Portland. And that's kind of a thing for students to take ownership over spaces out in their own neighborhoods as well. And then they can go back and visit those places with their friends and family. So it's kind of creating those connections where they can keep revisiting these places. Bustin' Barriers is another huge thing that we do. It's an adaptive basketball tournament that we've been doing for, gosh, I feel like it's almost 10 years now that we've been partnering with them. And it's just a chance for students around all the communities to come together and play basketball together and make new friendships. I've been partnering with all the community colleges for many years and access disability services there for our students so they can also have that connection continue out in the world. We have a connection with the Lower Columbia Estuary, and we go canoeing every year. That's been for the last about 3 or 4 years. The Trailblazers is something that we've continued to do for 12 years and go every year for students to have that connection and something around recreation that they want to do and maybe had never had the chance to do. And then there's just a lot of other places that we partner with internships, as well as going to the transition conference. So Chad and I can partner with other transition teachers and get ideas and learn about how to better our program as well. So yeah, that's kind of most of the partnerships that we're partnering with. I'm sure that there's some that we left off, but there's only one page for it. So had to keep it short.
Thank you so much, Devin. And one piece about highlighting the community partnerships here, and this pillar connects with families, is that students who attend CTC are 18 to 21. They are adults and they're able to and are encouraged and required to make their own decisions. So this is a big shift that happens at CTC from when students are attending elementary through 12th grade. Families are a huge and required component. Families shift in those responsibilities. They still are partners in this work, and the students become the primary conduit to making their own decisions, and they're signing their own paperwork and attending their meetings. So that is a big shift that occurs at this level. We additionally have many things that have happened in connection to professional learning, growth, and wellness. And Devin and Chad highlighted the Oregon State Conference, Transition Conference. That's an opportunity where staff from CTC on a regular annual basis participate with members from across the state to learn new information and to deepen those skills and connections around transition opportunities. The staff at CTC have also been engaging in the monthly equity professional development that's been happening across the district. And when we think about wellness in all of its aspects, Centennial's been able to celebrate 2 staff bringing 2 new babies into the community there at CTC. So we've been really excited about a baby that arrived in the fall and a baby that just arrived this winter. And then there are many, many whole school and whole class events. And you can see one of the big ones around dressing up for a fall event, and staff and students are involved in those activities and plan those activities together. We additionally have our systems of excellence that we're working on. And so with that, this is a continual part of thinking about transition, because for each student that comes to CTC, personalizing programs and personalizing opportunities around their interests is something that occurs. And so with each of those, new relationships are developed, new experiences for others to participate are a part of that work. We also have been approved for a new building. And so with that, that's a huge undertaking when it comes to the systems piece. And there have been 3 planning sessions. And you can see there's a picture here. This planning session involved students from CTC being able to look at how the building will be laid out, giving input around colors and floors and cabinets and all those good things. And then over the course of the last few years, the demographics for students who are attending CTC more closely now align with our district overall demographics. And for many years, this was not the case. We had way more of our white students attending CTC services, while this is available for all students who experience disability. And so there were some concerted efforts that started right before the pandemic and continued during the pandemic. And so it's really good to see that, again, for all of our students who these services are available, we have many, many more participating. And so we want to make sure that anyone who is able to access these transition services does. And then celebrations and challenges. I think both Devin and Chad highlighted many of the celebrations that are here, but there's no way that CTC could do what it does on a regular basis without the amazing staff that are there and the students. The students really are there to help determine what's happening next, what their programming is, what they're eating, where they're going on outings. And so to see them connect with interests, discover new passions is really exciting on a regular basis. They highlighted the paid internship opportunities that are in place this year. And then again, thinking about celebrations occur when students are getting their driving permits, when they've planned and orchestrated a trip. Many, many students have paying jobs, and this is a huge piece around the student who's graduating from the welding program. The new building is a celebration, and with that comes some sadness to leave the building that we currently have, and just working through all that. We did also suffer flood damage this year that everybody worked through, and it seems wild that it happened, because if you look at the walls, you couldn't even tell. They did such a great job repairing everything. And then with similar to other spots in the district, we did have some staffing things that came up earlier, and those have been resolved, and we have really stable staffing right now. So that has been fantastic. So with that, we're open for any questions, if there are some, for Devin, Chad, myself.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions? I'm not seeing any hands.
Director Shields is, waving. Just a quick question, Denise, and maybe even with Mo, if she's here for curriculum wise, and maybe Maren as the principal of Centennial. I look at the list of the things that these students are receiving, which incredible, right? And then the opportunity for 2 years to grow within those things that they are learning. And yet I also see things that I think our general population could be benefiting from a great deal. And so is there any kind of cross, I don't know what the word is, so help me with the word, but cross-pollination, if you will, with our high school instructors and our instructors at the transition center to maybe piggyback and learn from what you've acquired as expertise and what you're able then maybe to share with others. And when I was looking at this, I was looking at the independent living. I know that independent living means something different for everybody and at different levels, of course. But public transportation, resume writing, interview skills, and maybe that all happens not just at our transition center, but happens also at our high school environment. But man, those are important skills, and wonderful that you guys are doing it. And how could that inform and make sure that all of our students who are leaving Centennial, at maybe that have to leave at graduation, would also have those same kind of skill sets? That was more probably a statement than a question. Sorry, but it just piqued my curiosity as you were doing your presentation. So.
Well, Pam, I can answer some of that because one of the things that we do with CHS is they do have opportunities to come over and visit the program. We've actually taken some students to some sites. Like I brought a few students, there were high school students, to the music studios when we came to work on stuff because they're really into that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've had opportunities for students to come do outings with us from the high school before they graduate. I'm going to be going to the career and college planning at the high school for the whole day to talk to students about community college and getting that conversation started as well. So a lot of that is making those connections. And then the high school learning specialists are also able to come to the transition conference. So they get to learn some tools that they can bring back
Good.
and then also implement at the high school level as well. So there are some cross things happening, but the nice thing about the transition program is we do have the opportunity with them being adults to really have the freedom to go and try a lot of these things. And I know at the high school level, they have some more parameters around that, but we try our best to engage in getting them to come out and learn some of those skills. And Chad and I go to the high school as well and talk with families and students and attend every IEP meeting for students that are coming. And we hold a family info night for students that are prospective CTC students to come get an idea and start kind of advocating for themselves of what they want to see in their education before they leave high school. So there are some things happening.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Devin, it sounds like you've been with the district for quite some time. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, 12 years. And just at CTC.
That's amazing. Thank you. I know that CTC, I'm relatively new to the district on the board, but I know that CTC has definitely been through a lot over the years. And I'm just so excited to hear about your program and then to see the things that you're doing and then to support you with a permanent structure and just, thank you for the work that you do.
Well, thank you, Rose. I appreciate it. We appreciate it.
Any other questions for folks? All right. Well, thank you, CTC, for your presentation. Thank you, Denise.
Thank you all.
I'll before people sign off, I'll just share appreciation for the program as well. It's fun to have the opportunity to there's a few things I want to say. Number one, the end of the year graduation ceremony that is held there is, you go to different graduation ceremonies, but that's one of the best because you get to hear individual testimonials about the growth that the students who attend have made over their time. And for me, it's fun because as the principal at Butler Creek, and I think Devin and I might have started the same year. And so I've been able to watch her over the years and the work that she does. But some of the students that were in the structured skill classroom when I was at Butler Creek are now in the program. So it's fun to see them when they're there or in the pictures as well, as they mature in age and are able to develop those skills. And then the last thing I'll say is just with Chad and Devin and the team at CTC, there's a lot of care and customization and late hours and innovation that it takes to be able to meet the individual and unique needs of the various students who attend. And so I just want to express appreciation for all that they do, because I know that there's a lot that can go unnoticed. And as we saw just by some of those slides, there's a lot of different engagement that they do with community and with internships and so on. So the efforts there are appreciated, and the outcomes are fun to see.
Were you trying to make us cry, James? Oh, that was so
I, I saw you on the edge and wanted to kind of push it a little bit. See if I could get a tear.
That was so nice. Thank you.
Director Lynn, I see your hand. Go ahead.
David, I couldn't hear what you said.
Yeah, it was a bit garbled. Did you?
But David donated his birthday presents to us last year.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I'm sorry I'm driving. I can't say much, but just wanted to say you guys are great and love supporting the program.
Oh, thanks, David.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks so much for the support. We appreciate it. Good night, Devin. Good night, Chad. Good night, Cindy. Thank you all.
Bye.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next up, we have a legislative update enterprise zone. Director Superintendent Owens, would you like to introduce? Do you have any words for this one?
I do. I always do. So we have Stacy Michelson here, who is our Government Affairs Administrator for East County School District. She's housed at MESD, but she works for the East County schools. And so one of the schools that she is representing is Centennial School District. And so she is here this evening with the end of the legislative short session to be able to share a brief update of highlights from that legislative session. And then also, as you see the slash there, enterprise zones, the other piece is that one of the pieces of legislation that was done, I believe, in the previous legislative session, the long session, had to do with enterprise zones. And there's some agency that this school board has with respect to setting the rates for those enterprise zones. And there's been some work done to prime the pump in terms of what that looks like. And so Stacy's here to build awareness for us and to provide some context about some of the work that's been done. So without stealing any more of her thunder, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Stacy to share with us this evening, and appreciate her being here.
Great. Thanks, Superintendent Owens. I'll say Denise is always, she and her team are a bit of a hard act to follow, go from really, really rewarding good work to politics. But I will do my best to share useful information. I don't know that I'll be able to get you any time back, but I will try to move through this pretty quickly. I do have a brief slideshow that I put together, although let's see, there's share screen. Let me get to my right window. I thought I had this all queued up. Continuing with the tech issues. Let me just one moment. Make sure I'm sharing the right window here. Okay. Okay, can everyone see that all right? Okay, I think with that, I will not then attempt to enter the full slideshow view because I'm not quite sure how that would jive with Zoom. So as soon as Superintendent Owen said, I will give just the briefest of overviews of the 2024 short legislative session, because I know that y'all have gotten a lot of information already, either through COSA, the Coalition for the School Administrators, or OSBA, the School Boards Association. They have a really great comprehensive joint report that they've already got out for 24. But I did just want to highlight some of the really exciting things that we saw in the short session. And then I'm happy to take any questions or dive into further conversation if folks like. As many are aware, $30 million investment via House Bill 4082 in summer learning. That is really intended to just be step one. Part of that bill also included a requirement for ODE to convene a work group to come back in 25 with recommendations for long-term investments in extended school year. So both summer learning and before and after school programming. So more to come as we get closer to 25 on what those ultimate recommendations will be. Senate Bill 1502, recording and posting school board meetings. That'll take effect next year. We passed a statewide immigrant and refugee student success plan to go along with the other student success plans that are already part of the broader Student Success Act. Senate Bill 1558. This is one Denise and her team are excited about. Saw some fixes and clarifications to Senate Bill 819, which passed in 2023. That was the abbreviated school day bill. So specifically, we saw some more flexibility provided for some of our older high school students who may want to take advantage of some of the same opportunities, for example, for open periods or online learning that their peers in a gen ed setting would have. Senate Bill 1552 was one of Senator Dembro's parting gifts to us all. He is not running for re-election, and he is known for his omnibus technical fix bills. And so this was his final omnibus bill that included a whole slew of things. What I wanted to highlight here, just a couple of exciting pieces. We finally got the Oregon Youth Advisory Group across the finish line. That's something that COSA, in partnership with OASC and REAP, has been working really hard on the last few years. We did see some improvement and clarification to just cause protections for our classified employees. And specifically, we saw a tightening of the definition of classified employee so that now only includes folks who are actually part of a classified bargaining unit. And doesn't, for example, include folks like myself who serve as non-licensed staff in our buildings. And then there was also a technical fix around substitute pay. That was just cleaning up what had been a mistake in the workforce package from 2023. And then, like I said, many other components to that bill. But those were, I think, the pieces that sort of for you all as board members navigating, budget and also just sort of exciting pieces like that youth advisory group. And then one piece that's very technical and very much outside of K-12 specific policy, but I do think is really important for y'all to be aware of, is Senate Bill 1515, which was some technical fixes and clarifications, generally aligning paid leave Oregon and OFLA, or perhaps aligning isn't quite the right word because it was really, I guess, delineating would be the better phrasing, what types of leave would qualify for paid leave Oregon and what types of leave would qualify for OFLA. Currently and through July 1, the two run concurrently, and that will no longer be the case going forward. So employees will have specific access in certain circumstances to unpaid leave, access in different circumstances to the 12 weeks of paid leave Oregon. And I think if it works for you all, I'll just move through my 3 legislative slides and then we can come back for questions. So as we look forward, that's kind of the short session in the nutshell. I've talked with colleagues. It feels like we used to have much more of a break between short sessions and long sessions. There really is not that break any longer. We are already working fast and furiously toward 2025 legislative session. And so this is just sort of a calendar that lays that out, particularly as it comes to state agencies and their budget requests. So as we think about state school fund, CSL, all of those issues, agencies are already getting their policy option packages and bill requests into the legislator's office, or sorry, to the governor's office. The policy option package is how they submit requests to the governor for investments in their budgets. And they have to have all of that in. I think the deadline is coming up quite soon, actually, because as you'll see further down here, the governor's budget comes out later in the year. And so she needs time for her team to vet those requests from the agencies, actually put together her proposed budget, and then get all of that, actually put together in a public facing document, printed and available by the end of the year. So the timeline is not that different than what you all are in the budgeting process. State agencies are also starting that process, even though it feels quite early for the coming biennium. Got elections coming up, legislative days in both May and September. So that's 3 days of committee hearings down in Salem. Generally informational at this point. Oh, sorry about that. And then really the deadline that folks are working toward at this point and what's kind of creating all this work over the spring and summer is the September 27th deadline. And that's when legislators have to have their requests into Legislative Council for bills that they would like to have back in time to pre-session file. And the benefit of pre-session filing is that then those bills are all introduced and released prior to the start of session, so that on day 1 of session, those bills are ready to go and can be scheduled for a committee hearing. And so it just kind of really gives them a jump start on actually being able to move their bills through the process. So the vast majority of bills at this point are pre-session filed. Again, we've got that November general election coming up. very shortly after that, end of November, early December, the governor will have her budget out. Those bill drafts get back to legislators on December 4th, and then they have roughly a week. There are legislative days the following week, and that pre-session filing deadline is December 13th. So even though session, is 9 months away, 12 or 8 months away at this point, the work is very much already starting. And so just as legislators are planning out their bill requests for 25, we are also starting to think about what our local agenda might look like across the East County districts. There'll be some back and forth. I'll work with superintendents to put together what that regional list looks like. But some things that I'm asking them to think about and that I would like all of you as board members to think about so you can share your feedback with Superintendent Owens is one, a question on how much of my time folks want me to spend in Salem versus working on local issues. I am happy to do both, but I can't be in two places at once. So just being mindful that the more we have a local focus, then that may mean a more pared down statewide agenda. Or if we have a more robust statewide agenda, then there may be some of those local issues that just need to take a little bit of a back burner during the long legislative session. So on that statewide list right now, budget, right, always number one, state school fund. The governor's office has begun their CSL review calculation review. I think a lot of folks are feeling really optimistic that if we can get a better CSL calculation process, we'll just be starting from a much better place with all of our budget writers. I will note as an aside, last Friday, Speaker Fahey released her committee appointments for the interim, and we can assume pending elections this fall that those will likely carry over in many ways into the 25 session. And so we have seen a change in the K-12 budgeting space where Rep. McLean, who's been a longtime co-chair of the House Education Ways and Means Subcommittee, has been replaced on that committee as co-chair by Rep. Ricky Ruiz from Gresham. So Rep. McLean will still be a member of the committee, but will not hold that gavel any longer. So that's a pretty significant change. And I think, something that many of us as advocates will have our work cut out for us over the interim to make sure we're helping Rep. Ruiz get up to speed. And that's also, provide some new opportunity to have some different conversations and move the work forward with some new faces, but also keeping Rep. McLean's wealth of knowledge and historical context on that committee as well. And then I will also name that in Senator Dembro's omnibus bill, there was a requirement for the Legislative Policy and Research Office to do a study and a review of the quality education model. That was actually at the request of the Quality Education Commission, who themselves has noted that they feel the process would benefit from stronger guidance and clearer quantitative metrics in order to really ensure that the report can be, compared year over year or 2-year cycle over 2-year cycle. We also know we'll be talking about potential additional investments, as I mentioned, summer learning or extended year learning, what that looks like. There was some really great conversation about special education funding that was started this short session. Bills introduced to lift the special education cap, to fully fund the high cost disability fund. Those bills didn't ultimately move anywhere due to lack of resources to make those investments in the short session. It is a few $100 million to do both of those things. But there was a lot of interest on the part of legislators. And so I think we will see, hopefully some really strong movement on those topics in 25. I think folks are at least very interested in having the conversation and trying to find a way to get some additional resources there. And then we've got ongoing cleanup. As I mentioned, we saw some improvements to the just cause protections, but there's still some additional work that could be done there to tighten that up even further. Board stipends, I know, is an issue that has kind of gone back and forth with the Government Ethics Commission on whether we need a legislative change or not. And, that may be something that we revisit in 25 to try to continue getting additional clarity there. I think really just talking about unfunded mandates, there have been a whole slew of bills that have passed, paid leave Oregon issues being one, things outside of just strictly the K-12 sphere, but that have impacted our schools. And you all, as you're trying to balance your budgets locally, we want to make sure legislators understand the impact of those changes and how they're affecting budgets. And then really thinking about some other locally driven priorities. So historically in my work, I've really focused on partnering with COSA and OSBA on, all of those sorts of statewide issues, and we'll continue to do that. But I think also hearing more and more from some of our local districts that there's an interest in leaning into issues outside of K-12 specifically. So things like transportation, generally acknowledged there's likely to be a transportation package in 25. Can we lean in there and talk about some investments for safe routes to schools? some conversation with districts in the region about land use policy and concerns about, developments that are going in near school buildings, and hearing from local government partners that they are limited in what they can do, absent state land use changes to enact stronger public health standards around those sorts of land use regulations and decisions. And then on the local front, I just want to name the chair's budget. County chair's budget is going to come out, I believe, tomorrow, but my understanding is by the end of the week. The mayor's proposed budget is slated to come out in a couple of weeks, so expect more follow-up and more information as we see those proposed budgets and have some time to dive in and kind of let folks know what's being proposed locally. Continuing to have conversations with the county about Sun Schools as they look at their RFP process for the next 5 years. Both short term and then sort of longer term, how can we all partner together to find some additional resources to really expand and make a more robust Sun School system. And then kind of the ever-present issues, in some ways, unfortunately, on our list, but pedestrian infrastructure and safety, housing, violence reduction. I won't necessarily go into specifics there, but I think those are the continuing to find places where we can partner, and how we can bolster the work that our local government partners are doing. So I will stop there on the legislative front. Happy to take any questions, and then we'll move into enterprise zones.
Thank you so much, Stacy. Are there any questions from the board at this point in time? Director Lynn, please.
Hi, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I've seen other school districts, such as Park Rose, advertise pretty heavily their appreciation of having a legislative meeting with local elected officials, not only state, metro, but city, especially for a school district like Centennial that is kind of at crossroads of several jurisdictions. I was told it was kind of board interest for those kind of things, to have a set meeting with local elected officials. And so I'm wondering how much board interest is necessary.
Yeah, I mean, that is really up to you all. I will note I can take very little credit for Park Rose hosting those meetings. I believe that was started by Dr. Gray before I had even come into this role. And then I did step in and help with the logistics and the scheduling. And so I continue to do that and work with Superintendent Lopes-Sahau and his board. So if you all tell me that's something you want to do, then I am happy to work with Superintendent Owens and Missy and find a date. Usually how that works is we have set, the board takes, at least in Park Rose, takes the whole day. I schedule you in 30-minute increments with local electeds. In Park Rose, we've done it both in person and then post-pandemic, primarily virtually. I think there are pros and cons to both approaches. So that's one way we could do that. We could also talk about other ways of doing local engagement. But I just need to hear that that's something you all are interested in exploring, and we can have those conversations.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I'll try to follow up because I'm certainly am interested in that. And in local, you speak to more local issues, say like with the city of Portland, just our local neighborhood here in Centennial, the Portland side, passed a resolution in support of Portland Street Response. And we have many community members discussing issues and incidents with people experiencing mental health issues. So I'd always love to hear more about some little more local issues than just state. Thank you.
Yeah, sure thing.
Thank you, Director Lynn. Director Shields, Vice Chair Shields, please. You're muted.
Found the unmute. Thank you. Can you explain to me, I'm looking at the state and local issues slide, the last bullet under state, other locally driven priorities with partners, transportation and land use. And then I'm looking at our local issue, which is pedestrian infrastructure and safety. Do you know of at this time where that intersects? Like where is something already existing that we could hitch ourselves to that's at a state level? Because obviously East Multnomah County is a challenge anyway, sidewalks, roads, etc. Centennial specifically, I'm sure several people could identify where our needs are, right? So if there's something that's already existing at the state level, where would we have have some input and impact there?
Yeah, as I said, I think so no guarantees, but generally acknowledged that there will be a transportation package at the state level in 2025, with significant investment in transportation infrastructure. So that's always an opportunity where we could potentially really lean in and elevate the importance of a continued and increased investment in safe routes for schools. And I would say that's probably the best avenue there, because safe routes is sort of built into, right, the structure of ODOT, and is something that would be part of that transportation package anyway. So that is really how I would recommend leaning in on the transportation side at a statewide level.
And then would you ask for us to provide, for example, information, data, et cetera, how we would benefit from something like that? And what I'm looking for here is, instead of asking me the day before what we need, what do we need to prepare now for, getting ready, and so that we have something just to basically hand over if we can see where something's headed, how you helping us with that, or where else we should be watching and looking to, coordinate.
No, I very much appreciate that question, Director Shields. And I think that really highlights the need for partnership with some of our local government agencies, because I will admit, right, I don't typically follow transportation bills terribly closely during the session, unless, we're talking about buses or potentially safe route specific legislation. So I think as we kind of look at that piece around locally driven priorities with partners, it will also really be dependent upon some coordination and conversation with city and county folks, metro folks who are already doing that work. So I will happily follow up with you about, what's the best data that we can provide. And I will also acknowledge that I'm probably going to take some direction from the folks at Metro and the county and the city who are already doing the safe routes work, because they will also be able to let me know where it feels like there are the best opportunities to make those arguments within the transportation, landscape. Yeah, absolutely.
Other questions from board members at this point in time? I just had one comment that you actually did mention in the ongoing cleanup, that with the legislature, the board stipend piece, OSBA is advising us, yes, that it's unethical as written. And so I really hope there are plans to pick this back up and fix the wording and what needs to happen.
Yeah, I very much hear that. I will just name, I think many of us were frustrated because it felt like a lot of work went into that bill at the time that it was passed to make sure that it was going to pass muster. And now we've all gotten the legal opinion, right, that it apparently does not. So
I understand your frustration. Vice Chair Shields, I see your hand. And then Director Lynn.
The other question is about this local taxation on businesses. Can you give us some more information about the parameters and what are we looking at? Are we looking at some coordination between ourselves and other school districts, with Multnomah ESD giving us some guidance, overall guidance about that?
Before we get into that, because I believe that's the next part of your presentation, Stacy. David, did your question pertain to this part?
Yes, thank you. Actually, it did. I wanted to follow up on your question. When that was first presented as a conflict with OSBA, in terms of the board stipends, there were a couple workarounds which seemed like they were legally permissible, in terms of passing it for a future board or passing it for different positions. Given that it did not get passed in the short session, and we've had walkouts over several legislative sessions in the past, can we get some advice on from OSBA on how to proceed with that through the loopholes or through the legally viable options?
Yeah, and I want to be mindful.
Instead of just kicking it down the road.
So I want to be mindful, Director Lynn, of not getting out over my skis. So I'm going to say this with a caveat that I may need to follow up and correct myself. My understanding from OSBA is that we thought there were some legally permissible ways to do that. And since that has all happened, the Oregon Government Ethics Commission has given updated guidance or newer guidance we didn't have before, that they believe there is a conflict of interest across the board. So with that said, I will confirm that that is the case with OSBA. If there are existing loopholes that folks are, and I hesitate to use that word because that, if there are permissible ways to do that, they're not really loopholes. If there are ways to do that under the bill as written per the latest guidance from OGEC, I will happily follow up and advise there. My understanding from OSBA is where they are sitting. They believe that, districts should not be moving forward with this and that we do need legislative cleanup, in which case I'll be partnering with them and to figure out what that looks like in 25. So I will clarify and confirm that what I just said is accurate and follow up, but that's my current understanding.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right, if there are no other questions, go ahead and lead on with your presentation.
Okay. So enterprise zones, I will try to speed through this. It is a bit in the weeds, so bear with me. Kind of the short and long of it is enterprise zones are a tool that our local government partners have regarding economic development, where they allow businesses within a defined region to make new investments, and benefit from some tax incentives that are provided there. There are 74 enterprise zones statewide. The majority of those are rural. 56, 18 are in urban areas. There are some distinctions between the two. I'm only going to talk about urban for obvious reasons in this space. So the zones are defined by a local government and they're designated for 10 years. And then, as I said, businesses that meet certain criteria that I could pull up for you if there are specific questions, but essentially it has to do with the type of business, the level of investment being made. If a business meets those criteria, then they can enter into an agreement for a property tax abatement on the new investments that are being made in the zone. So it's not their entire property tax bill, it's just on the taxes that we will be charged for any improvements they're making. Those tax exemptions may not exceed 5 years in an urban zone, and to do a 5-year, that would be considered an extended exemption. A standard exemption is 3 years. So House Bill 2009 passed in 2023. This was something that OEA, the Oregon Education Association folks, worked on really closely with Revenue Chair Nathanson. The way that enterprise zones work, this is not new, this is existing. Business and firms and the zone sponsors enter into agreements detailing the parameters of those property tax exemptions and what that all looks like before a business actually officially applies or makes the investment. Right, so there's a general understanding that is agreed upon at the outset. What House Bill 2009 put into statute is that for new agreements for extended exemptions, so for those 5-year exemptions, the zone sponsor and school districts that would be impacted must have an agreed upon school support fee, which is a rate of between 15 and 30%. We're hearing from Business Oregon, don't know why they've made this distinction, but hey, you could set a rate of 22.5%. Any other rate needs to be a full percentage, so no decimal points. And so then the way that would work is that in years 4 and 5 of that extended exemption, the business would pay whatever that rate is that you have set. They would pay that portion of their entire abated property tax bill to the school district. So years 1 through 3, the entire abatement stands for the business. Years 4 and 5, they would pay a portion of what they would otherwise not be paying at all directly to the district. So what does this sort of look like in Centennial? This is a map of Centennial specifically. It does cut off at the county line. There aren't any enterprise zones that intersect with the district in Clackamas County. So you can see here, you've got some enterprise zones, and I'll follow up on the next slide, that are actually within Prosper Portland, in the city of Portland, and then a portion that is actually the Gresham Enterprise Zone. So this just shows you on the left there, you've got the Portland Enterprise Zones. The purple is their East Portland Enterprise Zone. And then there's a yellow enterprise zone that's primarily on the west side that goes into downtown and and the Pearland extends up towards Sauvie Island. And then the Gresham Enterprise Zone over on the right. I will note that for some of our other districts, even further east, there is a Columbia Cascade Enterprise Zone that is a combination of Fairview, Wood Village, and Troutdale. So that's going to impact Gresham and Reynolds as well. So there are some challenges to implementation around 2009 that I just want to name and get out of the way. The statute says that the zone sponsor and the districts, the zone sponsor will provide to the district the information necessary for the school district to invoice any of those businesses who would then owe that school support fee to the district. Got dates there. It is, essentially it's going to add some administrative burden. Business Oregon has said that they're planning to allow third-party billing. So we can talk a little bit more about who that might be, what that might look like. But is there in a way that we're essentially not forcing you all to now approach any number of businesses as potential vendors and sending out those invoices. So school support fees will count as local revenue for the purposes of the state school fund distribution. So on the one hand, it may sound great to say, oh, we're going to get a portion of this property tax we wouldn't have otherwise gotten. While that is true, it does not actually result in any net gain for the district. It will just be, canceled out. You'll get less in your state school fund allocation than you would have otherwise. It'll be treated as any other local revenue. It's also unknown how many new exemptions might be granted. So keep in mind, these would only apply to new exemptions. So you all will be setting a rate with the enterprise zone sponsors for new agreements that will be signed. And those fees would not actually start coming into the district until years 4 and 5 of those agreements. So the earliest that any money would actually be collected, if you were setting the rate right now, and those agreements were being signed right now, would be 2028. So this is sort of a prospective process, right? And then I also want to note, as we think about that timing, the way that enterprise zones work, businesses enter into the agreement, and then they actually work with the zone sponsor to identify the date in which the property is placed in service. And that's when the property tax abatement actually starts. So for example, you could have a business who's signing an agreement now, they're making their capital improvements, say that takes 2 years. They may not start their 5-year property tax exemption until all of that construction is done 2 years from now. So even within that, saying years 4 and 5, that could actually be more than 4 or 5 years out, again, that the district would actually start bringing in revenue. So superintendents and business managers got together with some of the zone sponsors just to sort of talk this through, identify some of these challenges, say what makes sense, where do we maybe go from here? Right, we've got Centennial, it has multiple enterprise zones that it falls within. It's true for many of our districts. For example, Reynolds is in all 3 enterprise zones. We've got enterprise zones that have multiple school districts within them. And so for our local partners in the economic development space, right, their concern is as they work with local businesses who may want to take advantage of these agreements, that they'll be in a position of saying, well, here's the rate you'd pay if you were in this area, but if you're in this area over here, right, it would be a different rate, because it is ultimately up to each district to set the rate with the sponsor. So let's see, again, getting a little bit ahead of myself. So one of the primary concerns here, there's no requirement that you all set a rate. You could do nothing, but if you don't set a rate, those zone sponsors, in this case, our city partners, cannot offer anything other than that 3-year basic exemption to the local businesses. And what we're hearing is that it's really the 5-year extended exemption that is most attractive in order to get businesses to make those investments in the local community. So our local government partners are quite concerned about what the impact would be on the tools that they have access to in terms of economic development if they're not able to offer those 5-year exemptions, which again would require them to work with you all to set that school support fee. COSA and OSBA are advising that it does require board action. So this isn't something that Superintendent Owens, for example, could just say, this is going to be Centennial's rate. You all will need to take some sort of action, whether that be a resolution, a policy that the board sets, or just a board approved intergovernmental agreement with the zone sponsor. My understanding is that any of those 3 things would satisfy that criteria. And so we've talked about how those rates could potentially vary between district. I think there is a general interest among all parties, at least between leadership, so superintendents, business managers, and zone sponsors, in having alignment across the region and just having a single rate that all districts would agree to set with their zone sponsors. And I think it sounds like erring toward the lower end of that scale, both because, again, it's no net gain to the district. There are, advantages to local economic development partners in being able to offer lower rates to businesses that may be investing in the community. And then there is some risk, right? Because if you have a business that's being billed and they're not actually paying, it's on the zone sponsor to come up with an agreement for that that business, what the sanctions or penalties would be for late or missed payments. And so that's something that our business managers were pretty keen to talk about too, is, what happens if we've budgeted for money that's then not coming in? We probably don't want to budget higher and then have that money not coming in. It may be safest for us to look at that 15% rate. And then our zone sponsors do seem to recognize the administrative burden that this poses for districts. And I believe they're all exploring what their capability may be internally to be able to just take on that billing on behalf of the districts. So more to come from them there. I believe we are waiting for more information from the zone sponsors collectively that will be shared out with all of our school board partners as you all consider and make just some decisions going forward. I know I've already taken more time than I think you were planning on spending on this. I'll pause and I'm happy to answer questions. It is a complex topic. It's not straightforward by any means.
Thank you very much, Stacy. It is a lot to take in and understand. Are there any questions off the top of your head, board members, while we have Stacy here? And if there's deeper, longer questions, maybe it's definitely something we can have an email back and forth as we're looking at time. Vice Chair Shields, please.
Just, Stacy, if you would share your bullet points with us, that would be helpful, just because as
it's a lot.
Chair said, oh my gosh, so much to digest. And did I miss it? What kind of timing? Like, we should be moving forward and making our decision by?
So yeah, great question, Director Shields. Again, there is no requirement. We are hearing from local government partners, some of them more urgently than others, that they have some businesses that are interested in signing agreements. They would like to have the school support fee set when they sign those agreements so that they can offer those extended 5-year abatements. So what we've heard would be the ideal target is to have a rate set by the end of the third quarter. Whether that is realistic or not, I think is a little bit dependent on how quickly we get some information back from the zone sponsors. We've shared information out about summer board retreats and who takes the summer off from board meetings, and that may play a role. But I think as you're thinking about future calendars and what questions you may have, that's sort of the target that tentatively folks are working toward.
Director Lind, please.
Yeah, sorry I'm late, but I hope this is a relevant question. With the local funds coming in, and you say it's kind of even with the reduction in the state school fund, does that add to the overall pot of the state school fund so that there is still some marginal return on that?
Also a great question, Director Lynn. So I think the answer is it depends. Right, that depends on how the legislature responds to this going forward in future biennia. So they could choose to keep the general fund investment at essentially the same level, including roll-up costs, so a flat level, in which case the entire pot would increase. What I suspect is likely, based on how we've seen typical revenue processes play out, is by virtue of having more local revenue coming in, the legislature sees it as an opportunity to keep the state school fund at the same level it would otherwise be, but without the need for the same level of general fund investment.
And then, and as a follow-up, And if we do not collect that money, where does that money go? Does it stay with the business owner as just a tax expenditure for their profit?
Correct. So if you don't set the rate, well, so let me, I guess, again, you don't have to set a rate. If you don't, the only thing that the zone sponsors can offer locally is a 3-year abatement. So whereas the business would be getting potentially up to a 5-year, let me maybe pause here. Currently, businesses would get up to a 5-year abatement of 0 property tax on their new investments. If you set a rate in years 3 and 4, whatever portion of that property tax that would have otherwise been exempted, would currently be exempted, would be coming into the district. If you do not set a rate, then there is no year 3 or year 4 and 5 rather. The business can only receive that 3-year abatement from the local enterprise zone, and then they would go back into the regular local property tax rolls. So it'll be money that's coming into the district with or without a rate in years 4 or 5. It's more local revenue in years 4 and 5 if you're setting a rate, because you would be getting, again, whatever, let's say 15%, you would be getting 15% on the entire property tax bill that's being abated, rather than just what the school district's share would be, of that property tax in general. So 5% versus 15%, say. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was talking about the years 4 and 5. And if we choose a lower rate versus a higher rate, the difference is retained by the business.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So it seems that, correct me if I'm wrong, there's not a lot of incentive for us as a district to set a high rate when we really want to encourage businesses to take root in Centennial. We have a lot of vacant businesses and storefronts here in our district. And so it would behoove us to potentially set a lower rate and a higher abatement period to entice businesses to come into the Centennial district.
Chair Solowski, yeah, that is my understanding and my recommendation. I think there are some strong incentives there, both in terms of, as you said, the economic development side, and then I would defer to Paul Southerton on what he perceives as the potential risk involved if you were to set a higher rate.
Thank you. Director Lynn, did you have an additional question?
Not necessarily. I'm definitely interested in hearing more information, especially what other, the uniform rate around the other areas. My only concern is that with so many enterprise zones, it's kind of a race to the bottom, and there's a lot of tax revenue that is just kind of being left on the table. And then at the same time, we're saying that we don't have enough revenue for the state school fund. I understand the seemingly catch-22 with increasing the local revenue, but it still seems like there's a lot of tax money that's not going to the general fund and then not going to schools. And so, yeah, that's my concern.
Thank you, Director Lynn. Are there any more comments or questions before we move forward?
I would just round out some of what I
Please.
heard at the risk of getting ahead of my skis and throwing confusion into the mix. I would say that there would be an increased local revenue in years 4 and 5, but that increased local revenue would be negated by the state school fund equalization formula that would then wipe out that local gain. So the net result is pretty flat. Stacy and Paul, would you concur with that assessment?
Yeah, I think that's right, Superintendent Owens. And the other piece I would name that I failed to highlight in this piece is we are also talking about that increase would only exist for years 4 and 5, right? So in years 4 and 5, you may gather 15, 20%, whatever, rate you set. And then in year 6, that's going to revert back to the standard school district property tax amount. So 5%. So again, Paul can share more about what that would look like from a budgeting standpoint and trying to track and monitor how much revenue you're anticipating in any given year.
Yeah, I think you both have accurately captured it. I think overall for us, I think the risk is fairly low, regardless if we set it at 15, 22 and a half or 30. I think we can compensate and work out our forecasts accordingly. And we'll just need to let it run for several years to see what the actual collection rate is and what the impact is. My understanding is this was an attempt to fix or at least address some of what Director Lynn had identified as a way to kind of recoup some of those local taxing dollars and perhaps enhance the state school fund. I don't see this as causing any real harm other than the administrative burden to the district. And it sounds like our third-party partners might be willing to take that on. So overall, I see this as neutral or potentially slightly positive.
Thank you so much. All right, if there's nothing further, thank you, Stacy, so much for joining us. And we will definitely be in touch with more soon.
Great. Thanks so much for having me, and apologies for taking so much of your time tonight.
Important stuff. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Stacy.
At this point, I will go ahead and turn it over to Superintendent Owens for superintendent's report.
All right. Let's see if I can buck the trend on technology here, but are you able to see screen? Great. All right. I know we've been going 2.5 hours strong. Given the heavy agenda this evening, I intend to provide a brief report this evening, and it's my intention to meet that expectation. So let's take a look. As Chair Salaski said at the opening of the meeting, Centennial School District celebrates Administrative Professionals Day each year to show appreciation to the administrative support staff across our schools and offices who work diligently to keep our schools and offices going. The job title of administrative professional is more of an umbrella term for many jobs in that category. In fact, there are hundreds of jobs that fit the description of administrative professional, and we have many to thank across Centennial, including, as was recognized earlier, executive assistant to the superintendent and board of directors, Missy Grindle, who's operating this evening's meeting. So on behalf of the board and administration, I again offer our thanks to Missy for her hard work and her support. Also, as was mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, this year's Teacher Appreciation Week is May 6th through 10th, 2024. While I believe expressing appreciation should be a constant practice, celebrating our teachers during a designated week offers an important opportunity to take a moment to say thank you and show gratitude for the work that they do. In recognition of our licensed staff, we will be having a Teacher Appreciation Breakfast on Wednesday, May 8th at Centennial Middle School in the cafeteria from 7 to 9 a.m. Board members have received an invitation, I believe, and are welcome to attend. And then you see pictures from last year's breakfast. Or let me take that back. We see pictures from the breakfast that we just had for Classified Appreciation Week. In Centennial, we know registering a child for kindergarten is both an exciting time for families, and also it can bring up a lot of questions, which is why we are hosting our annual Connect to Kindergarten event on Thursday, May 2nd from 6 to 7 p.m. at each of our 6 elementary schools across the district. Any child who will be 5 years of age on or before September 1st is eligible to enroll in kindergarten at their designated neighborhood school. Our district website contains information and instructions on how to register your child online. And once families have registered, finished the registration process, they can also enroll their child into the early kindergarten transition program over the summer. And finally, yesterday, along with directors Andrews, Lynn, and Chair Salowski, I had the pleasure of attending the City of Gresham's annual State of the City address, presented by Gresham Mayor Travis Stovall. In addition to the address by Mayor Stovall, in which he shared information about the city's accomplishments, challenges, and path forward, Guests were treated to an honoring of Congressman and Centennial graduate Earl Blumenauer upon his upcoming retirement. To celebrate the Congressman, the Centennial High School Concert Choir was on hand to sing the national anthem. And I'll invite directors Lynn Andrews and Chair Solowski to share anything they'd like, having attended yesterday. And at the same time, I will say that concludes my superintendent's report.
Record speed in getting the superintendent report done, I believe. Thank you, Superintendent Owens. Man, that concert choir, they were so good. I was very impressed with their rendition of the Star Spangled Banner. Anything, and for the others that were there, was there anything that you wanted to mention?
I would just say it was really great to meet Earl Blumenauer and learn. He mentioned a scholarship that he is working with Centennial, so that was nice.
I have a lot of thoughts, and I'm just going to not share them tonight. I'll do that at another time. It was a great event, though. It was really a fun event.
Yeah. Thank you. Let's get through some confirmation items and then take, a brief break. I mean, we've been going since 6, but I want to get done. So, first off, do I have a motion for confirmation items?
Confirmation items.
Second.
All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 The ayes have it. I suppose I should still say all those opposed say nay, even though I know I'm losing it. I've been sitting in a meeting too long. All right, let's take 5 minutes, a real quick 5 minutes. We will come back. You know what? It's 8:54. Let's take 6 minutes. We'll be back at 9, and hopefully we'll be able to get this stuff done very quickly. I will see you at 9 o'clock. Thank you. That 6 minutes went by really fast, but here we are. Let's see here. Up under new business. Oh, let's wait just a minute till I see everybody's back. All right. Thank you all for coming back and being so prompt. Superintendent Owens, would you like to take 7.2.1 introduction of the school calendar adoption?
Sure thing. Thank you, Chair Slavsky. So we have the annual privilege of establishing school calendars for the subsequent school year. And so the calendar committee convened earlier this winter to work through some different options for what that calendar might look like. And what you see in board book is where the committee landed with that process. I'll go ahead and hand it over to Assistant Superintendent Dr. Katsuda to be able to share with us what the committee came up with and some highlights from the committee's work.
Thank you very much. Good evening, board. As you see there's some key calendar events listed. They're fairly standard. A lot of them have existed for years. I would say we've generally moved around a few days in terms of orientation, the way we start our year. We're expanding that a bit by bit every year to ensure that onboarding and orientation and professional development for staff is pretty stable, and we start off on a strong foot. As you see there, a couple of dates to note. We have a staggered start for kindergarten. All of our breaks are landing on generally the same weeks of the years as we've expected, or as we've had in the past. And last day of the year, or last day of the year for 12th graders is June 6th, for 8th graders June 11th, and for all the other students June 12th. So it's fairly standard. And we recommend that the board approve the adoption of the school year calendar as it's laid out here.
Thank you, Dr. Katsuda.
I move that we adopt the school year calendar.
I'll second it, but I have a question.
Great. So it's been moved and seconded that we approve the Centennial school year calendar. We'll just go around real quick and see if there's any comments or questions. And I'll go ahead and start with you, Vice Chair Shields.
Oh, okay. Ooh. I'm looking at the bulleted items. Question one, we're on a trimester system. We're remaining on a trimester system. Was that ever thought of differently?
It has been different in the recent past. And actually the high school just moved to a trimester system from a semester system. And I know that Marion can speak to the benefits of that for the high school there.
You don't need to speak to it, Marion. I was just curious as to that. It is, we're continuing, and I'm going to assume we're continuing because it's working, right? I see that on the calendar, we have a tentative graduation for our high school. It's not a bulleted item unless, I'm blind, so I will admit to something if I missed it. Do we have a high school graduation date, or is it we're still working on that? Because that is something that people have to make plans for.
Yeah.
We're still working on final plans, and so that's why it says tentative. Part of it is, booking and the Coliseum and the dates, and so once that is finalized, we will be publishing it out, but that's why it says tentative on there.
And then my last question is, looking at the bulleted items, what I don't see it in bullets, but I think I see it. I'm sorry, I'm having to go back and forth between things. What are we doing about professional development days, release, things of that nature? Any changes? Because wasn't that a conversation last year about changing?
You're correct. We built in quite a few professional development days last year. We had a specific focus on district-wide responsive classroom training that we wanted to implement in the district. We have pared that down with the idea that a lot of professional development will be occurring in staff meetings. And we've front-loaded some professional development time at the request of staff who wanted more time for orientation and a deeper dive into curriculum and some of the planning for the school year, the start of the school year. So it'll be ongoing throughout the year, so we'll have less half days as we've had this year going into next year.
Thank you.
I said last question, just one more. I apologize. We're clear enough on this that parents can make good decisions about the days that a student may be getting out early or coming in late.
The calendar committee works to consolidate a lot of those half days to full days. And we've lined them up between the levels as best we could. If anything, I think the calendar is even simpler this year than it was, or will be simpler next year than it was this year. And we've simplified this year's calendar as compared to the year before, right? So
thank you.
Our hope is that it's family friendly. That was one of the areas we were focused on when we developed the calendar.
Perfect, thank you.
Other questions? Not seeing any, we'll go ahead and take it to a vote. All those in favor of adopting the calendar, raise your hand and say aye.
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 All those opposed? The ayes have it. We have adopted the calendar. Back to my agenda here. Next up, gotta do it all on one screen. Apologies. Instructional time waiver, also with Dr. Katsuda.
Superintendent Owens, do you want to say anything before I jump in?
I could prepend it, but you'll cover it anyway, so just go ahead.
Okay. In February, the state school board provided the option of an instructional minute waiver to school districts, particularly school districts who were impacted by the inclement weather that occurred in January. If you recall, in January, Centennial had to close our schools for 4.5 days due to the weather conditions and facility issues. We are this year we were in excess, far in excess of instructional minutes, but 4.5 days is a significant amount. So we did some analysis, and some of our elementary schools were slightly under, but could make up required instructional minutes by state law by adding or taking a few minutes from recess between now and the end of the year. So it wasn't a big deal. The only school and grade that was significantly under was Centennial Middle School 7th grade for 11.2 hours. And given that was a 4.5 day shutdown in January, that's not that much time. So we are proposing we would like to apply for the waiver for that amount of time. Part of the process for us to be able to apply to the waiver is we have to propose it to the board, and the board has to approve or give us permission to apply for that waiver for the 11.2 hours of instructional minute makeup time for Centennial Middle School 7th graders due to inclement weather. So administration recommends to the board that they approve our request to file for a waiver with Oregon Department of Education for instructional minutes. And I welcome any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Katsuda.
Let's move to approve the time waiver as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the instructional time waiver for 2023-2024 as presented. Are there any questions or comments at this time? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. All right, the next item under new business is me. And hopefully you've all had a chance to look in board book over the proposed board meeting calendar for the upcoming year. Are there any questions about that? Did anything come up for folks? We have one meeting in July. We have an all-day retreat scheduled in August. And then other than that, everything is the same as it's been, with the exception of changing the date of the meeting in June due to potentially having the graduation on the 11th. Director Andrews, I see your hand.
I'm sorry, I didn't notice. Are we still going forward with the second meeting of every month being virtual?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Superintendent Owens, please.
I think I just realized that I could have used the hand raise feature, so sorry. I would just say, I think you spoke to this, but I'll just reinforce a connection to the calendar adoption previously in terms of the graduation contract with the Memorial Coliseum being up for review. That's an opportunity to potentially move that date to a different date. So I would say that that June 18th day with the asterisk could potentially be moved back to its originally positioned spot of the second Wednesday, provided that the graduation is moved, which we just don't know at this point. So.
Hand raise.
Go ahead, Director Shields.
Along those lines, and Superintendent Owens, this might be something for just a topic at a later time, and if that's more appropriate, let's do that. There is a cost involved with graduation, and when you take it to the Memorial Coliseum, it's like $30 to park your car and bring your family. There are some of those kinds of things that do we, in the process of making a decision about where it's handled and where it's held, do we take all of those kind of things into consideration? And if we need to put that on the agenda in the future, great, we can just do that at a later time. But those are the questions that kind of run through my head about graduation. And besides that, I like the graduation ceremonies that we actually had at Centennial, and we will have an improved stadium. We have an improved, place. So I apologize for my dog.
Yeah, I would say that just in response to that, it's interesting that you bring that up because Principal Miller and I talked about that this afternoon. I had my regular meeting with him today, and we talked about graduation options as well. There is a cost involved with holding it at the Memorial Coliseum. I think it's around $40,000 if I'm not mistaken. So it's a pretty penny to have it there. So there's that. When we did the graduation at the outdoor stadium back during COVID, we had to do 2 sessions just to accommodate the seating. I think that could be alleviated by the purchase of chairs potentially to allow for everybody to fit in at once. So I think that there was social distancing at the time that isn't an issue now. So I think that there is feasibility. And as it pertains to the elevation of student voice in the process, I know that Principal Miller has polled the students, the junior class, to see what their interest is for next year. And I don't want to speak for him, so I'll let him speak to that. Also recognizing that the topic at hand right now is the governing board of directors calendar. So I don't want to take our response too far off track, but Principal Miller.
Now, one of the things we're actually, we have formed different groups and are asking that question to elevate that student voice. And so far, the feedback is that they do like Memorial Coliseum or Kelly Auditorium or like that, but we're still in the middle of surveying. And once I have that finalized, I'll consult with Superintendent Owens, and then we'll make a decision.
Thank you all. On that note, is there a motion to approve the governing board of directors schedule?
approve board of directors meeting schedule.
Second with a question.
Great. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the board meeting schedule. Are there any comments or questions at this point? And I will go ahead and start with you, Director Shields.
My only question is that we really need to make sure that board directors are looking at that August 1st date as a board retreat. It's very important that we're all there, unless there's an extenuating circumstance that, just that happens. But that with this amount of notice that we will make sure our August 1st calendars are clear. And if they can't be cleared for whatever reason, there's something going on, to let us know so we can look at a different date. My calendar happens to be clear. I checked that off, but just want to make sure that the 7 of us are available because it's a really important date for us to be all together.
Thank you. Director Stanley.
I already communicated with Missy, but that date is only going to work if it's morning to early afternoon. So just be aware.
That is usually the plan.
Okay. Yes, again, I'm in a show and it opens that night. So.
Oh my gosh, that's exciting. Fantastic. Any other comments or questions? I see your hand, Director Stanley. Is that from before? Do you have something else? Nope. Let's take a vote. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Excellent. Back up to my agenda. Future agenda items. Is there anything that folks have? I'm looking at you, Superintendent Owens. Oh, and Director Stanley.
Let's let Director Stanley go first so I can pull my thing up.
Thank you. I just have a question. Looking at everything, is the board coffee structure going to stay the same for next year?
I'm thinking that maybe we can talk about it at board coffees next week. Sorry, that was a little joke. Yeah, I think it can be. It's open for discussion though. We've gone trimester this year, but it's also during the day when you work. So that doesn't really accommodate for you. So definitely open for discussion and open to any other feedback that others might have tonight.
I think let's take this under advisement because I know that several of us have jobs that make it a little more challenging to come to board coffees. And so maybe we can talk about having multiple options for folks to engage. Are there actually board coffees next week?
There are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I'll make sure that's on my calendar. I don't know if I can come. Anyway, all right. Other future agenda items. Superintendent Owens.
Yeah, I've got the introduction of incoming Park Lane Elementary Principal Diana Mitchell. We have the Pleasant Valley Elementary School report. We have CVA program reauthorization that was originally slated for this meeting, but we punted to early May. 24-25 student fees, and then perhaps a few policies.
Fantastic. All right. This meeting is adjourned at 9:19 p.m. We will be moving to a separate meeting link for the executive session. And I will see you all there shortly.